Okay, it's 6:30. We're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to call the meeting to order for January 22nd for the Urban Design Commission. Can we get roll call, please?
Mr. Sawhill?
Here.
Mr. Tybor?
Here.
Ms. Sullivan?
Here.
Ms. Emerton?
Here.
Mr. Winchester? Ms. Ream?
Here.
Mr. Condon?
Here.
Mr. Leonetti?
Here.
Thank you.
And I'd like to announce that we do have a quorum this evening. Can we get the minutes? Or can we get a motion for approval for the minutes? We have a motion from Jim Sawhill and a second by Thomas Tybor for approval of the minutes. Is there any discussion? Okay, minutes are approved. Do we have any disclosures this evening? Jim, Commissioner Sawhill.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In case 2013-141, the Anchorage School District, the Eagle River High School project, I have a conflict of interest. My firm has been retained to perform work on the Eagle River High School site. We're working on the preliminary plat and then the road design for Yosemite Drive. So I have a monetary interest in what happens on that site and wish to be recused.
So can I get a motion for Commissioner Sawhill to participate? To direct him to participate? We get a second? It's been motioned by Commissioner Tybor and seconded by Commissioner Sullivan. Don't we vote on this?
I speak to the motion.
Would you want to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you. I don't intend to support the motion. I do believe that Commissioner Sawhill does have a conflict.
No, same.
So I thought we...
Oops.
Okay. Commissioner Sawhill has been recused for the Eagle River. Monica Sullivan? Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes, I would like to be excused from voting on the consent agenda, Resolution 2013-025. I have a conflict of interest. I work for the firm that is doing the job.
And as this has already been voted, we don't need to vote. You will not be voting for. Okay. And Commissioner Ream?
Yes, I must disclose that my firm, PTS, has been retained as project managers for the case 2014-003 under the regular agenda, and therefore I'd like to recuse myself from this case.
Can we get a motion to... Commissioner Tybor, would you speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you. I move to direct Commissioner Ream to participate. I don't intend to support the motion. I do agree she has conflict in this case.
Commissioner Sawhill, to your second.
I don't know if it's support the motion.
Okay, Commissioner Ream has been directed not to participate. So moving on, we're on the consent agenda. Can we get a motion to approve the consent agenda? Oh, sorry. Before we do that, are there any more disclosures? Okay. So now we're on a consent agenda. Can we get a motion to approve the consent agenda? No, I didn't see him on there. Oh, no, he is. Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. Commissioner Leonetti, back on disclosures.
Yes, I would just like to disclose that of all of the cases that are on the regular agenda, I have been associated in a professional association with the 2 of the 3 presenters, so I don't know if I need to go through each case and state that, or just state that my firm is not directly associated with them. I have no financial gains from it or anything. I just know them through a professional association and wanted to disclose that.
Can you, which cases?
Let's see here.
Yeah, just the numbers, fine.
Yep.
Okay.
They are the case number 2013-143. The petitioner's representative, 2014-003, the same, 2013-141, and 2013-142.
Can we get a motion to direct him to participate? Commissioner Leonetti to participate. Commissioner Tiber, can you speak to your motion?
Thank you. I move to direct Commissioner Leonetti to participate. He has indicated he does not have any financial interest in any of the cases. I don't believe he has conflict of interest, and I intend to support the motion to direct him to participate.
Commissioner Sawhill, to your second.
Yes, I do, and I intend to support the motion also based on his disclosures. I feel he can participate fairly in those cases.
You don't need to vote. Okay. Are there any objections? None? Okay. Then you've been directed to participate.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any more disclosures? None? Okay. So now we're moving on to the consent agenda. Can we get a motion to approve the consent agenda? We got a motion to approve from Commissioner Tiber and a second from Commissioner Sawhill. Is there any discussion? Do we need to pull any? Does anybody want to pull any items from the consent agenda? Okay, any discussion? None? Okay. Do you want to speak to your motion to approve the consent agenda? Commissioner Tiber? You do? Okay.
No, I intend to support it.
Okay. The consent agenda is approved.
Madam Chairman, do we need to deal with the decommissioning issues that were under special order of business? Do those require any action from us, Sharon, or is that?
Yes, it would be good if the commission would just decide to either agree to it or not agree to it. So a motion for approval, if that's what the commission desires, would be a good thing to do.
Madam Chair, if I may continue?
Please.
I move that the commission accept or approve the decommissioning of the 1% art for the Chugiak Senior Center and the decommissioning of the 1% art for the Spenard Recreation Center based on the memos provided that describe the reason for those decommissionings.
Commissioner Sullivan, did you want to speak to your second?
I second the motion from Jim, but I think that things should not disappear. I mean, we're approving because there's no any other option. But both cases were kind of disappear without permission. So I don't know if there's any way to deal with things like that, Sharon. Do you have any?
Through the chair, Ms. Sullivan, yes, the new curator for art is working on that issue. She's aware of it, and particularly with the Chugach Senior Center, that was a big topic of discussion. And so they were trying to put things in place to make sure these sort of things don't happen in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Leonetti, did you wish to speak?
Yes, through the chair, Sharon, what we have in front of us is basically we've been asked to approve a piece of art, two pieces of art that have been decommissioned. However, we have documents in front of us that show it in place. So I guess the question is it still in place? I mean, or maybe the better question is, was it removed for safety, maintenance, destruction, or theft? Do you know anything about that? I see that it's been missing for at least 4 years, but
Through the chair, Mr. Leonetti, I know the piece out at the Chugach Senior Center, that piece has been removed. And the other one, yeah, it's missing as well. I think these photos were taken, right after they were installed. And that's why the photos were included, but they're not still there.
okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and a second by Monica Sullivan. Is there any additional discussion? Any objections? Motion is approved. Okay. All right, so now we're moving on to regular agenda. We'll be starting with case 2013-143, Anchorage School District. Is there a staff presentation?
No.
None at this time. And do we have a petitioner?
I believe we do, Madam Chair.
Hi, I'm Michael Carlson with McCool Carlson Green. I'm the architect of the project. Also here tonight is Calvin Munt, the project manager for the school district, and Leah Baran from Earthscape, our landscape architect. If you'd like, I could give a presentation. However, we don't have, the only issue we have with the staff comments is the one about the moose fence, and we've already talked to staff about providing larger caliper trees rather than doing moose fencing around the trees, and they've been satisfied with that. So we don't have any problem with the comments. I know there's some new commissioners, so if you'd like me to describe the project, I certainly can, but it's up to you.
Does the board have any? I know we have some questions for you, so.
Sure.
Commissioner Sullivan?
I have a few questions. I wasn't in the first review. The first one is, you have a second, no, it's the second phase where you're going to add the big multipurpose room. Is related to that. Let me check the drawing. Another part. Okay. It's phase 2. So you're showing the extension of the school in phase 2. My question is, the bus drop-off, this is a new drop-off for the bus for phase 1?
The whole entire project is in one phase, and the bus drop-off, there currently is a bus drop-off there. We're reconfiguring it to accommodate the new addition, the addition of the gym and the classrooms that are part of this project. So it's a very similar configuration to what it is, but we've had to shift it a little bit to make room for the addition.
Okay,
so it definitely is part of the project, the bus loop.
Okay, and my second question, I'm very familiar with Gearwood, and I was a little concerned about the roof parapets and the snow piling when we have conditions of really heavy snow,
Yes.
up to 8 foot. So I was worried about maybe the snow pulling the parapet. Have you think or have some thoughts of how to solve the issue?
Yeah, we actually had a lot of discussion about that. The current situation where the snow slides off the roof, they've got some real drainage issues around there. The snow piles up around the building. There's safety issue concerns about the ice coming off the roof. And so with this project, we're attempting to solve most of those problems. We do recognize that Mother Nature can be unpredictable, and so that the parapet solution, there is a possibility that the snow may exceed the parapet from time to time. But we've had our structural engineers looking very carefully at the structure to make sure the structure can support the snow loads, and we built the parapet with steel braces at 2 foot on center to resist the push that the snow and the ice will put on the parapet. But it is a challenging environment, so it's not going to we're not necessarily believing that this is going to be a perfect solution, that there will never have to be some attention to the roof. If they do have some issues up there with ice coming over the parapet, they may have to do some thawing. But for the most part, we think it'll solve a lot of the existing problems they have out there. There's also a deterioration of the building because the snow comes off the roof and piles against the building. So there's some trade-offs, but we're pretty confident that this will be an improvement and will serve the school and the community much better than what we currently see out there.
Okay, and then my last question is like your main canopy. In your site plan, it's not showing which way it's sloping, or does it just like flat?
It's a low slope, but it slopes back towards the building, and then we have drains, internal drains. So that was another issue for Girdwood. Of course, we would have loved to do a gabled canopy, but there was no place to shed the snow that wouldn't land on the kids in the sidewalks. So we're taking the same strategy there. It's a low slope or flat roof, but it's not actually flat. It drains back toward the building. We have some drains. We're putting heat trace in all the drains so that they stay open all year round. And so we're going to try to contain all the snow and water within the roofs, put them into drains, and then they flow out to the drainage ditches.
Okay, thank you. That's all my
You
questions.
bet. Yeah. Huge challenge for that site is how to manage all that snow with sloping roofs.
Yeah, we have, I'm in the board of some Olympic Loop buildings, and we get 8 foot of snow sometimes to have to remove immediately from the buildings. I was like a little concerned, but
Yeah, I
like,
think
you've been,
our snow load up there is 3 times at Anchorage, 3 or 4 times what Anchorage, I mean, that's what we designed for. So
well, thank you.
You bet.
Commissioner Leonetti?
Thank you. I have concerns with the drop-off and pedestrian circulation and the vehicle interaction that happens there. Could you just describe quickly the process that you guys went through to come to this configuration?
Sure.
Essentially,
Can we?
every person and if there's a drop-off, every person goes through the vehicle drop-off area?
For drop-off, we have a drop-off lane in front of the building, and if we want to, I'll describe it. We can put it up on Elmo, I've got, if that helps. Can you do that? Do I need to do something? Okay. So it's actually going to function very similar to the way it functions right now, except that we've focused and channeled the pedestrian circulation. The entry's right here, and it's staying right where it is. And then you have a drop-off lane in front of the building. And it's wide enough so that they can park cars and have through lanes. And then one of the issues they have right now is that there's access to the parking lot in this location, and it creates some circulation issues. So we're closing off that access in this location so that after you drop your kids off, if you want to park, you circulate around, you go into the parking lot, you park, and then you come in. If you're actually just coming to the parking lot, you'd come into the parking lot, park, and walk through the parking lot, and then we've funneled the pedestrian traffic to this location where we've got the handicapped aisle. We've done a crossing, sidewalk crossing at that point, leads you to the canopy and then into the building. So it's similar circulation to what they have right now, except that we've organized and controlled both the automobile traffic and the pedestrian traffic a little bit more effectively than you currently have at in the current situation.
Did you look at any other alternatives to separate the pedestrians from the drop-off? From the parking, rather, going through the main drop-off?
Right. We did look at a number of scenarios. One of our goals was to not expand the paved area any more than it currently is. And so we're trying to work within what's currently done so we don't take any more of that vegetation away from the buffers onto Tiny Creek. And it's a fairly constrained site. And so we did look at some alternatives, but they're alternatives. Some schools, if you've got the space, the parking can be off the side, the drop-off can be in the middle, and then the parking doesn't have to cross the drive lane. But that really was not, we didn't have that kind of space to work with. But this is a fairly common arrangement for a lot of ASD schools as well. So it's one that they've been able to manage pretty effectively elsewhere.
Thank you. The other question that I have is, if you look at the configuration of the bus and the vehicular circulation is well separated, there is a pinch point, and I believe it's about 10 feet. I could be wrong on that dimension, but if you could imagine a bus dropping off, maybe two buses dropping off a busload of kids, and then emptying out, you have 30 or 40 or so kids that are going to empty out and then cycle east right through there.
Right through here, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is the main drop-off for the entire area, and there's a pinch point there. And I was curious on the thought process that went through there, like, there's not going to be 30 or 40 kids, there's going to be 5. And so the volume of people going through there is going to, the width will sustain the volume going through there, but there's some pretty generous spaces for pedestrians out front at the bus drop-off as well as the vehicular drop-off. So I was curious how that progressed to this solution.
Mm-hmm. Well, the width of the sidewalk in this location at the pinch point you're talking about is about 8 feet. And the traffic flow generally tends to be one direction. If they're dropping off in the morning, the buses park here, the kids will get off, and they'll flow into the building. So we don't have a lot of cross traffic. We're not anticipating a lot of need for pedestrian kids to go from the building to the buses at that point. And then conversely, during the evening pickup, the kids are all flowing this direction, getting on the buses. And then folks from the parking lot are coming and going in this direction. So we thought 8 foot was plenty adequate to accommodate the flow of traffic, particularly since it would be primarily a one-way pattern.
Yeah, the concern isn't intersecting from coming out of the building to the bus. It's going from the bus past cars that are dropping off and a gaggle of kids.
Oh, yeah, there will be some drop-off in that. Yeah, kids dropping off in that point. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Our feeling is that 8 foot probably is plenty adequate for that operation. you get a drop off the car, the door opens, accommodate maybe 3 feet or so for that to happen, and then 5 foot for the kind of one-way flow. And
Okay.
it's a fairly small school, 200. Well, we're designing it for 250 kids, and so it's not a huge traffic flow. And of course, a lot of the kids, it's kind of a mix between drop off and bus, and between not very many kids walk because of the location.
Was this issue brought up at the previous meeting, if anybody was on here?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay. Thank you. And I had one other question, and maybe it's for staff. I see that there's a comment that to resolve with traffic, rather, number 2, you ensure that the required parking spaces meets Title 21 code. If that is not resolved, does this approval grant a variance?
Well, I can respond to that. We're actually, by Title 21, it's based on the size of the multi-purpose room, 2,738 square feet. It's roughly 50 square foot per car. That's 55 spaces, and our current plan shows 68. So we're pretty confident that we're well within the Title 21 requirements, and so we don't think that'll be an issue to resolve with staff. It should be pretty easy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Condon?
Yes. I have a question about the materiality of the facade of the building. The Girdwood has this desire to be well integrated into the natural environment, that their comprehensive plan feels that this is a major contributor to the evolution of the built environment in Girdwood. And the previous siding on the building was wood, of course, yes. And you're proposing to use zinc-colored metal for the upper fascia and some kind of cementitious fiber board for the lower siding. I'm just wondering, what kind of, did you consider something that is somewhat less manufactured and perhaps more organic, like a wood kind of facade? I noticed that you propose using benches in areas with natural wood surfaces, which is just in terms of longevity, I wonder about that solution. So what, and the renderings of your facade are showing faux stone, and I'm wondering, is this off-the-shelf faux stone, or does it really have a relationship to, gray wacky and argillite and, native stones of Girdwood? Is this taken into consideration, or is this sort of a cost-effective way to deal with siding the facade of the building?
Yeah, well, it's definitely both, and I apologize, I should have brought the color board. We've had 4 meetings down in Girdwood. We've shown them the actual materials, and we talked about the cement siding, but the cement siding we're using looks very much like cedar. In fact, if you look at their community library building, it has a siding on it that's not wood, but looks very much like wood. So it'll have the appearance of one of the cement material will look very much like wood. The tile we're using is a porcelain tile, and we're mixing the colors and the sizes to create kind of an ashlar masonry feel to it. But because we're dealing with an existing structure and, of course, the cost issues, we have to go with a fairly light material. So real stone just wasn't in the cards for this. So that was kind of our approach, was not to try to do a faux look where we're trying to make it look like stone, but we're using porcelain tile in a way that has kind of a masonry feel to it, but still has its own integrity in terms of it being porcelain tile. And then the fascia itself, Girdwood is not only natural materials, but also they're looking for very subdued materials. So that's why we picked that kind of zinc, weathered zinc look, so that it'll have more of a natural feel to it than a strictly painted metal or colored metal.
Okay.
The red that's there. Mm-hmm.
And I was also wondering, in your landscape, in the discussion of landscape, you're saying that there would be areas with certain plantings that could be used as sort of a pedagogical tool for student education. I'm wondering if the same kind of approach couldn't be applied to the facade of the building, where you're using natural materials, perhaps sustainably harvested woods that talk about not only natural wood and its sort of green credentials as a carbon sink, and also talking about Girdwood's history as a major supplier of railroad ties to the railroad as it pushed through. Did you think about this in terms in the evolution of the project?
Maybe the first thing I should probably comment on is that the Anchorage School District, because of their maintenance budgets, it's very hard to convince them to use wood anywhere. We were able to get their blessing on using wood for the entry canopies and for the structure of the entry canopies. So that's actually going to be real wood. But the rest of the facade really needs to be materials that don't require routine maintenance, and all your wood products. If you got to rely on the Anchorage School District to come back and sustain or maintain those products over time, they just don't get done. And so we really did need to look at materials that wouldn't require that ongoing maintenance. So use of a lot of wood really wasn't something that was in the cards for us to consider. In terms of the building as a teaching tool, we're doing not so much on the outside, but inside we're doing some things with the structure and the mechanical and electrical system so that the students can see kind of how they all work, how they fit together, and then how they work to conserve energy. So we are doing some things like that within the building itself.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Leonetti?
Yes, I'd like clarification from staff on why the condition is there to provide Title 21 code required parking if petitioner is stating that it exceeds it.
Through the chair, Mr. Leonetti, they didn't provide us with parking counts, so we're just having them prove up that they meet the Title 21 code for parking requirements, and it sounds like they have that number.
Are there any additional questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion to approve? It's been motion to approve by Commissioner Sullivan and seconded by Commissioner Sahel. Commissioner Sullivan, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, I will like to move and approve case 2013-143, but I would like to add into item number 1 from the staff report letter I that shows new bus drop-off area layout to incorporate the new expansion of the building.
Commissioner Sawhill, would you like to speak to your second?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to second, and if I could ask Commissioner Sullivan to restate her new condition I, 1I. I missed part of that. I'm sorry.
Okay. It's just to show in the site plan the new layout for the bus drop-off to accommodate the new expansion.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, speaking to the motion, I intend to support the motion. I would concur with staff's analysis that the final site plan submittal meets the standards for a site plan review. I also find that the previous comments from the board that were provided at the preliminary review have been addressed, and I think they've done a good job doing that. I think it's a difficult site, it's a constrained site, and maybe there's some different layouts that could have separated the pedestrians a little better, but I think based on their constraints, they've done a good job to focus those and redesign those to eliminate conflicts. I believe the planting materials that have been chosen are appropriate for the area, and I appreciate the efforts they did to expand some of the plantings into the islands as we requested. And I think they've done a great job, and I intend to support the motion.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan, did you have anything to add?
No.
Is there any additional discussion to the motion? Is there any objection? Okay. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Leonetti, I keep missing you.
Yeah, thank you. I intend to support the motion. Being here the first meeting, I think it would be not prudent to add additional site plan constraints to the pedestrian drop-off. I think it functions okay. There might be some other layouts that would be a little bit better, but I think that as shown here that it functions okay, and the petitioner did a good job of responding to the questions I had earlier, and I appreciate that.
Is there any additional discussion? Any objections to the motion? Okay. Motion passes. And I would like to read that any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Urban Design Commission takes, except commission recommendations to the Assembly, which are not appealable. Appeals must be filed with the clerk's office within 20 days after approval by the Urban Design Commission of the resolution, which is the commission's final decision. A fee for the appeal is required at the time of the filing. All right. Moving on. I'll now bring up case 2014-003. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This project involves construction of a new Mulcahy Stadium to replace the aging facility and the provision of parking improvements for the full sports complex. Along with the parking lot improvements, additional parking for all the parking lot improvements are to provide additional parking for all facilities within the Chester Creek Sports Complex. The DSR also includes a new driveway entry from Gamble Street and a detention basin south of Kosinski Fields 3 and 4. As stated by the MOA Traffic Division and DOT, the proposal does not alleviate the traffic congestion that has existed on this site for many years, mainly in association with Sullivan Arena. In terms of vehicle circulation, the new parking design reorients the parking to provide an alignment that better facilitates traffic movement, and pedestrian safety. With the new orientation, pedestrians are much more visible to drivers, increasing pedestrian safety. In terms of the pedestrian circulation, from the new parking lot, most of the spectators would enter the new facility at the northeast corner. This entry features a new plaza to provide queuing space for ticketing and entrance to the stadium. The submittal notes that the perimeter stadium fence would be constructed of wrought iron to replicate the stadium details of historic ballparks throughout America. There have been instances of moose becoming impaled on the pointed tips of wrought iron fences when trying to jump over this type of fence. To prevent this, the designers may consider specifying a wrought iron fence without those type of details. Rain gardens are going to be incorporated into the parking lot to accommodate water runoff from the parking lot and to facilitate infiltration. There will be a children's playground, and the playground will have a baseball theme and is included in the interest of serving the needs of full family entertainment. The grandstands will provide approximately 1,275 permanent seats. Beyond the permanent seating, there will be a sloped banks that will be covered with artificial turf to allow picnicking for large capacity crowds. That's all I have, and the conditions are recommended conditions are on page 6 of the packet.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Doesn't look like we have any. Can the petitioner come forward and state your name and spell it for the record?
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, my name is Dwayne Adams with USKH, representing the petitioner, who in this case is Municipality of Anchorage. They also are represented by PTS. Ms. Nicole Rim had to leave the room, unfortunately. This is a project that's been a long time coming. Back in 2006, firm Land Design North I was associated with in concert with USKH evaluated a number of things in the whole area that's called Chutch Creek Sports Complex. We looked at facility needs in general. It was a rather elaborate study of needs as well as existing conditions, and from that evolved a number of recommendations. Fundamental to that, and probably as important to most consumers of the various shows and sports and entertainment venues that are there, was simply that of parking. That on a number of days, perhaps as many as a dozen a year, where multiple venues have events, there may be a demand of as much as 4,500 spaces on a really big event at multiple venues. Of course, it doesn't happen a lot, but it happens enough that it's certainly a problem. Available are about 1,440 spaces. So you can obviously see we've got a tremendous disparity between the need and what's available. If we were to develop virtually the entire available site, get rid of Kaczynski ball fields, and do everything, we might be able to get up to half of that, but that's a tremendous demand that simply can't be met on the site. But what we're trying to do is to meet that demand as much as possible. We talked about parking, now let's talk about access. Traffic, even this past weekend, was backed up almost as far as Fireweed Lane as people are trying to come in. One of the problems is there's only one access in at the north on 16th Avenue, one access in on Gamble, and that's a tremendous constraint as well. So there is the need to find and Adding to that is that what available lanes might provide additional entry into the site are blocked off so that we got 1 and 1. But that's not really a problem. It's exiting that is the bigger problem because people get trapped there for as much as a half hour. In fact, if you were in the south parking lot, you may as well bring a picnic lunch because it takes forever. The entire lots have to empty out before that one, which was over by the Gomez new sheets of ice are located, or refurbished sheets of ice. That really is a problem. So fundamentally what we had when we started was a parking issue we were trying to solve, and we were designing a new parking lot that was going to be located where the Kaczynski Fields are. These are the Kaczynski Fields. This is Kaczynski Field 3 and 4, which are the south ones. The north ones are Kaczynski 1 and 2, the ones that are most proximate to A Street. As we got into this, there were a couple problems. First of all, we are still taking people, large masses of people, and they must walk along 16th Avenue, and that mass of people, as they're walking in, are blocking the entry lanes into the arena. So one of the bigger problems is that as people are trying to drive in, there's pedestrian conflicts right at the entry, which exacerbates the fact that traffic is backed up, and it's not as safe as it might be. It is certainly controlled by policemen, which helps, but that still doesn't make the most desirable condition. Meanwhile, Mulcahy Stadium is in a state of disrepair, and anyone who's had the pleasure of using the restrooms or the concessions knows very well what I mean. It really is in need of a remodel, and the Alliance for American Legion Baseball was trying to figure out how to deal with this. And in some creative thinking and some analysis of American Legion needs, it was found that those two fields that are on the north, 1 and 2, could be relocated, one to Bartlett and one to South Anchorage Sports Park. And with that, which is what we were planning to do, that parking then might be able to be located where Mulcahy is. Mulcahy then's flipped to the location of 1 and 2 Kaczynski Fields. That is tremendously important to the ability for this project to progress, because Kaczynski Fields 1 and 2 lie within land that was Land and Water Conservation funded. Land and Water Conservation funds prevents the ability to provide the displacement of green space, recreation space, without an equal in quantity and quality of the facilities that are displaced, both in acreage as well as the type facilities that are located there. Kaczynski 1 and 2 are deficient fields. They don't meet any sort of standards, and as a result of that, they really weren't serving American Legion. So moving Mulcahy, especially with an artificial turf field, allows us to provide a field that provides for much more intense play than Kaczynski 1 and 2. So now we have a recreation facility replacing a recreation facility. Mulcahy is not within that Land and Water Conservation funded area. Converting that to parking is an acceptable solution. So as a result of that, we now have a parking lot that has been expanded. It's central to all the facilities. It feeds the Kaczynski Fields that remain, Mulcahy, Anchorage Football Stadium, the Gomez hockey sheets, Ben Boeke, as well as Sullivan Arena. So it really solves a greater problem. What you see in the graphic that you have before you and in your packet is also, as staff suggested, the lanes are reoriented so that people can move down the traffic aisles as opposed to walking between traffic lines of traffic, and when you have children in icy conditions and are unseen with large vehicles, that's problematic. So it does solve that. It also, as you see, provides a direct connection from Cordova down the hill, allows Cordova to empty directly into this new entry. That new entry then circles around. It allows then Iditarod and other users to then channel through here, and crowds then to aggregate around the area. While staff did talk about the stadium. One facet of that that's real important is the location that you see at that location I just pointed to, which is a pavilion that'll serve multi-season use. During the baseball season, garage doors open so that it looks out and faces towards the field. In the winter, during Iditarod or something, that pavilion doors open on the other side so people can be inside. They can be warm, radiant heaters, and can watch the dogs go by. It's a place to get food. You can set up catering so that larger community need can be made. It can also be rented. Thus, it's a revenue opportunity, rented for graduations, rented for company events, rented for any number of special events that might take place there, as well as the plaza that's located to the south. So just in summary, this wraps up a lot of needs. Does it meet the overall requirement? No, not even close, unfortunately, but it is a big step in that direction. We've met with Ms. Mormillo of traffic to address a lot of her concerns. She understands exactly what we're doing. What she's very pleased about is that this does have a new exit onto Gamble, so traffic can get out Gamble at 2 locations instead of 1 location. It also provides 4 entries and exits into the parking lot along 16th Avenue, whereas there are 2 now, so it's doubling the entry-exit on 16th Avenue, allowing that street that I had talked about, the access from Gamble that is now blocked off. It then allows this then to feed down into the area and into those other locations on those north parking tiers. So it does address a lot of her concerns, and she's pretty happy that we're dealing with that, but she's not satisfied we aren't meeting the overall demand, and we'd love to do that too, but it is a big issue. I'm about out of time, so what I'd rather do is just get right to your questions and answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the petitioner? Commissioner Leonetti?
Guess I'm the first one. I have quite a few questions here. The first, let's start with traffic. A traffic impact analysis was not performed, and I'm curious the threshold that on a project like this would require it to be performed, and if that was discussed with Stephanie.
Through the chair, Commissioner Leonetti, first of all, I guess you need to, a traffic impact analysis, as many of you know, is generated when a facility is going to generate traffic, and we need to know how to accommodate that traffic. That's what a traffic impact analysis does. And there's a threshold in the building review process that demands out of the platting process or conditional use change of zoning that would demand a traffic analysis based on this new generation of traffic. Well, first of all, that's not what we got. What we're trying to do is to solve a problem by providing and addressing something that was identified in 2006. In 2006, we did a very involved traffic study. That traffic study went way beyond what a traffic impact analysis would typically do. And we can certainly furnish that, but it fundamentally identified the deficiency and the problems with exiting and entry, which developed the concepts that you saw in your packet, of which this solution addresses a part of those concepts. So first of all, it wasn't really a traffic impact analysis that was done in 2006. It was a larger traffic study, and we are directly addressing that. So doing a traffic impact analysis for a project that was generated by a traffic study is counterintuitive to a great degree. Now, the other part of this is that traffic analysis and a reevaluation would probably be very appropriate if if conditions had changed, and that would be very appropriate to go back and go, well, what has happened? Do we really need this? And are there other ways of solving what the change need is? It hasn't changed since 2006. Last cases were around in 2006. Ben Boki was still operating as it does now. Gomez sheets weren't called Gomez sheets, but there were 2 sheets of ice. There was also Anchorage Football Stadium in full use. There was also a Mulcahy Stadium as well as Kaczynski Fields. So fundamentally, nothing has changed. So should there have been a change of conditions, that would be appropriate. You do have a condition of approval that says resolve with traffic outstanding issues, and I believe that captures that. We met with Ms. Murmillo, as I said today, as a matter of fact, as well as a number of other staff out of building development. And, she never raised that as an issue, and we're certainly pleased to revisit the traffic to the degree it's changed, but it really hasn't. So anyway, I hope that addresses
Yes.
your question.
Yep. Another question. Do you know where the platted accesses are for the overall site?
The platted
Yeah.
access?
Like, is there a platted ingress egress on the west side on, is that A Street? Go ahead.
Through the chair, Mr. Leonetti, there is no platted access, nor has a DOT agreed to provide an access, and that is a question that probably should be addressed, and that is one thing we wanted to do was to bring in an access off A Street. As we went through if you look at the concepts that were developed that provided for that central access, which I think is highly desirable, particularly in getting another way of getting into the complex earlier from A Street, all those basically, Kaczynski Fields disappear completely. Someday that will probably happen. And our hope is at that time we can find a solution to bring traffic in, probably compromises that plaza a little bit, but that is still an opportunity that is out there. But with the limited funds and the limited scope of this project, we dealt with what we could. So in your packet, what you have is a preferred alternative, and that preferred alternative addresses the parking that we defined. It does not suggest that that is the ultimate solution. It only addressed what we should fund at this time, and that's what that preferred alternative does. Now, also complicating that issue is that new roadway does also abrogate the requirements of that Land and Water Conservation Fund requirement. So that process, we were talking about one today, for example, that is at least a one-year process. In addition, if we displace, say, 100 acres, we have to find and purchase new 100 acres more. And we can't just simply flip some inventory from another place. It has to be substituted with parkland, one for one, acre for acre. And so that's a complicating issue that really made that untenable at this point.
Another question, if I may. There was discussion about a public-private partnership, and that it was in 2006, as I know, accomplishment. So that's one question. The other one is, was a parking structure ever examined for the area?
Through the chair, Commissioner Leonetti, yes, to deal with your last question first, yes, one was considered. We did look at a multi-use, multi-story tower of some type that would have a parking garage on the bottom 3 to 5 stories and some sort of a combination of uses up above, commercial, retail, even residential possibly. In essence, funding for something like that with the limited income that was projected just didn't pencil, and that was summarily dismissed by the group that sat as our stakeholder and our advisory group, and nor did the municipality feel like that was an option that really was going to see the light of day relative to overall needs. With respect then to your first question, which is the public-private partnership, at that point, the public-private partnership were the stakeholders, and that wasn't anything. We couldn't identify someone who was willing to take that on. Now, since that time, though, there is a group called the Fairview Business Association. And the Fairview Business Association has an active project for which they have actually received design money, or they've received planning money. and preliminary design money for a parking garage that would be located where the Anchorage Aces and Green Connection are located now. So they are looking at a multi-floored building that would have multi-use in the top floors and several floors of parking below. And we've met with them on a couple occasions to discuss how that might fit, just based on our knowledge, not necessarily part of this project, but how that might fit to provide logical pedestrian connections across, I guess that would be Gamble, Ingra, I guess that's Gamble, across Gamble into that retail area and then down across the access road. So it is something with respect to the public-private partnership that does have some traction now.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sahel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Adams, I have several questions. If you can bear with me, we'll step through them. The first is, was any other location for Mulcahy Stadium ever considered? One of the things we have here at the Chester Creek Sports Center is we just have too much stuff in one location. And here's an opportunity to maybe take one of those components and move it to O'Malley Road, move it to Tudor Road, move it to Russian Jack, move it to a place with better soils and lower site development costs. Was that ever considered here?
Through the Chair, Commissioner Sawyer, yes, it was. Not as part of this project. Specifically, this was a parking lot project, but we did address that long ago in the 2006 study. We did consider South Anchorage Sports Park specifically. There's really messy soils there too, so that doesn't solve anything, and the ability to get in and out of that wasn't any better, nor was the ability to build parking much better than what we have now. So that was dismissed. We did not consider Russian Jack Springs. Other stakeholders' conflicts were just felt too overpowering. And then one other site that was looked at, and these were all very casually. I mean, this was not, I have no documentation of this, but we did explore this within our stakeholder group at our meetings, was that of Anchorage Railroad property, which to me was pretty attractive. A lot of the concerns there are, first of all, the railroad is still trying to sort out its operation versus development issues. You know, at what point do their operations are they overridden by other needs, retail activity, the things that the Ship Creek plan is trying to do. That's before the Planning and Zoning Commission next month. There's also right now inducing that, you know, a lot of traffic onto AC and Gamble was not something anybody wanted to get into. So after a lot of discussion, that finally fell aside. Also, the railroad wasn't too interested in something that really didn't generate a lot of revenue for them, because they want revenue off their land. So those were the things we did consider.
The next item is the Anchorage Football Stadium. You know, we're putting football stadiums in all the high schools now. I see the demand for that facility going away. Was that ever considered in this master plan? Was that a location we could maybe move Mulcahy to?
In some of the alternatives, we did get rid of Anchorage Football Stadium, and at the present, Parks and Recreation, even with the fields that have been built and the play that's taking place at the other schools, they still have Anchorage Football Stadium working quite often, and they just invested a bunch of money into new turf, about $1 million into new turf. So the municipality at this point still feels that it fills a valid need within the community. We did discuss whether that, I was actually a proponent that really needed to move for the very reason you mentioned, but Park still feels it is an important piece of the recreation community.
Okay, my next question or comments, deal with the alternatives you looked at. I thought you did a great job of developing some alternatives. I think you developed 6 alternatives, and it looked to me like alternatives 1 through 5 were great, and alternative 6, which is the preferred alternative, is not so great. And the main difference is the other alternatives all develop a new access off of A Street into the complex. You know, this is an opportunity for us to do the best we can to improve traffic and circulation in that area, and I think we really need to take that opportunity to do that. You know, I applaud the new exit onto Gamble. I think that's going to be a great addition to this. With the new access onto A Street, it would double the capacity of vehicles getting into this area. And if we don't take one of those alternatives, I think we're missing an opportunity. And my other concern is the preferred alternative. It looks to me like it blocks, with the new $20 million Mulcahy Stadium, our best opportunity for a new access. And it just looks to me like alternative number 5, you know, which has the road through the middle, and puts Mulcahy Stadium down in Kaczynski 4, is a much better alternative. So I'm just concerned that overall we've picked the wrong alternative, and we've put a bunch of work into detailing it out, and we're precluding any improvements to getting traffic into this area.
Through the chair, Commissioner Soil, I agree that is a needed access. I think I touched on it to a great degree, and I also would suggest that, you know, that's not dead yet. If you look at any of these other alternatives, you see again Kaczynski disappears, and this simply reflected, I think, a point in time that Kaczynski was going to remain at that point until we found a place to put these, and it does exactly what you say with the placement of Mulcahy there, or for that matter, replacement of Mulcahy anywhere virtually without removing all the ball fields. We're stuck with what we have now. I don't think it's a dead issue. I think in the long run, Kaczynski Fields 3 and 4 are going to go somewhere else. They are not happy there necessarily. One of the problems is if there is a game going on at Anchorage Football Stadium and an event at Mulcahy and an event at Ben Boeke, these people have no place to park, and so they aren't happy there. But things being as they are, and incremental change taking time, at this point they are here. It doesn't preclude a better solution. Are we there yet? No.
I have a couple questions on the detail of your design. First, north of the parking expansion that's in your site plan, what will the width of the sidewalk be along 16th Avenue?
That's, depending on where you are, 10 or 12 feet.
10 or 12 feet.
And if you go to any Aces games in the winter, you know that gets constrained to 3 feet there at Mulcahy, so it's a pretty big improvement.
Yeah, no, that's great. In looking at your site plan, you have 21 spaces that are off 16th Avenue, north of Mulcahy. Looking at those, I don't see that they provide a substantial benefit to the area. To me, it provides an opportunity for some additional congestion, and for those low-use spaces, that the larger parking area would be sufficient. And, you know, I would suggest that those should be removed. Do you have a comment?
They were felt necessary to do a couple things. If you look at that alternative 6 and the preferred alternative, for example, it had a parking area that went down here to Kaczynski 3 and 4 with the intent that to address that problem that I just mentioned about their not being happy with the fact that oftentimes there's no place for them to park. So that parking area that I just talked about was intended to address that specifically. Well, funding constraints being what they are, it did prevent us from being able to afford that. So this was a gesture to address that. I harbor the same concern that you do, and would like to see as much of that walking traffic along 16th eliminated as possible, but it was felt that it was needed to address that need. As well, during the year-round, there will be retail outlets within this new stadium for Bucks and Pilots, and they're configured so that they can sell out the back of their new facilities. So during a game, you would come in through the front, meaning where the stadium seating is, but when the stadium's closed, then they would open the retail doors on the outside so you could park and then walk in and get stuff. So that was another thing that was provided to them. The stakeholders felt it was important to them. I can say that.
My next question is concern is that the parking lot expansion isn't going to reorient with the initial phase, the parking that's between that area and Sullivan Arena. I think that's a great part of your design, the reorientation of that area, and it's going to really improve the flow of pedestrians and the safety of those pedestrians. And one of my thoughts is to add an additional condition that requires that area to be included in the parking lot expansion. Could you address that?
Commissioner Sawhill, there's not money to bring that up to new standards, but we met today, as I mentioned, with Ms. Marmillo as well as a number of other people, and that was a very concern they brought up, and Mr. Jerry Hansen and Ms. Ream both agreed that that's something we're going to do. We're going to restrike that area to reorient that. And if you wish to make it a condition, that's fine. It's going to happen. I can tell you that.
Thank you. That's all I have right now.
Commissioner Sullivan?
I have also a few questions. First of all, I'm glad that this is having some improvements. I used to live close from this area, and I feel that anything that will improve the area is going to help a lot. One of my questions, first question is, and I was just looking at one of your alternatives. Alternative number 5 has closed the entry of the okay, there's how could if I can show you wait, maybe. Okay, let's go back to your design. So you have your new Mulcahy Stadium location. So when you're coming in 16th Avenue, you turn, and as I see how cars behave when there's big events, there's a stacking of cars waiting to find a parking. I see that you have 3 crosswalks from your islands, from the ADA parking stalls. I'm just wondering how it's going to behave when there's traffic and there's cars coming in and stacking, and there's no, between these 3 crosswalks, it's going to be a little hard to manage the people where they're moving, because cars are going to end maybe in the middle of the crosswalk, so people is going to start just going around the cars. And I was looking at your alternative 5, and seems that you close the corner, and that allows people to cross safely, because you won't have like big stacking of cars in that area. I wonder if you can do something similar. I know that you're in front of the street, across 16th Avenue, which makes sense that you have an entry there, or maybe reduce to 1 crosswalk and have people cross differently. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Madam Chair, Ms. Sullivan, we could certainly look at, what is the most appropriate way to deal with that issue. I understand your point. And I really don't have a good answer as to whether there's a better way of doing that. I understand the issue. The more desirable would be to simply place these right up against the curb. That's what we'd like to do. What we have is a bit of a constraint in that we want Cordova to read straight down. And we really are trying to make this entry proximate to Cordova for that, to be quite honest, the ability that the canopy might be something that someone would help fund. Where we got a $21 million project, our construction budget is 13.8. So we've done a number of things since the submittal as we're continuing to work to iron some of this stuff out. One of the things is we'll put the footings and foundations in, but we're going to look for a sponsor for a highly visible piece of architecture and gain some traction there with some of the funding. So that's all kind of part of this is trying to resolve that. I'm not quite sure, without really looking at that, how to resolve that issue. If you wanted to put a staff condition that says evaluate best possible solution to address handicap parking, we can certainly look at that. I don't really have an answer right now.
Thank you. Okay. Then my next question is related to that area. So most of the time we have a lot of people walking from 16th Avenue, and they will walk through the plaza. Earlier you mentioned that you wanted a multi-seasonal use, which is kind of one of the main criteria of our comprehensive plan. My question with the roof, and maybe you're too early in the process with your 3D images, but I was looking at the perspectives, and it's hard for me to understand how the roof is going to work when it's maybe a curved roof that it's shedding back into the plaza. I did have more questions about the roof, of like what's the intent of the roof, because the orientation of the stadium seems to me that for most sports it should be west-east versus the north-south, so the angle of the sun. The rain seems like where the water is going to go. You have gaps. They're not covering fully the bleachers. It seems like a little complicated. Maybe you are not at that point yet where you have solved that problems. But I was wondering, the main roof is going back into that plaza, and how you were going to handle snow and rain.
Ms. Sullivan, that is an issue. You're right, we aren't far enough in the design process. We did discuss that with Mr. Jim Hiddle has been kind of leading the architecture on this. We do need to work on that roof so that we end up capturing that so that doesn't become a problem. And the falling snow is an issue as well. And it may require some sort of snow guard to prevent falling snow and falling icicles. So that is a relevant concern, one we're aware of and one we haven't addressed quite yet. But Mr. Hiddle, who's the lead architect, feels pretty comfortable that he can get us there. You had another question.
It was about the orientation.
Oh, the orientation. That's, I played baseball as a kid, and I know a little bit about baseball, but we weren't smart enough to know a lot about baseball. So early in the process, we brought in a group called Ripken Associates. It's owned by two brothers. One is Cal Ripken and his brother. They were both major league players. Cal Ripken's Hall of Famer of some renown. And we consulted with them on these very issues, is what's the right way to go about doing this? Does it need to be reoriented? We also had the Bucks and the pilots are in our stakeholder group, as well as a number of other people who are serious baseball players, and that was one of the first questions I asked is, gosh, it looks like the batter's eye is right in the sun, and what about the catcher? And nobody seemed to be concerned about that. It surprised me. I'm not going to challenge Cal Ripken. So I said, good, if you guys are happy, I'm happy. And that surprised me because I was concerned about that. But maybe they're just so used to playing, with that same orientation that they just want it to stay or something. I don't know.
I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah, it surprised me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for all your answers.
Thank you.
Commissioner Condon?
Sort of going back to that first exhibit that you had, this exhibit C, the site layout. I think it's interesting to note this sort of predominantly municipal area bounded by 16th Avenue, Gamble on one side, A on the other, Chester Creek on the south. So we've got this sort of chunk of territory that is fundamentally municipal public land. Okay, now you mentioned that there was consideration of a parking structure south of 15th between Ingra and Gamble, which is not even on this this layout that you've got. But what we do have on this layout in the southeast quadrant is Worthington Ford, which is a massive expanse of asphalt as it is, which is probably more asphalt than the new asphalt parking lot that you're proposing. Has there been any kind of effort to incorporate that parcel into sort of a municipal family or a municipal area and utilize what is already a parking lot as parking facilities for this sports area?
Through the Chair, Commissioner Condon, yes, we looked at that real hard, actually, and what was the possibility of some sort of maybe land swaps or any number of things, and there wasn't any interest on the part of Mr. Worthington. They're real estate people, probably make more money in real estate than they do cars, actually, so they're pretty savvy about where their investments and how they're handled, and they didn't seem to have any interest. But that was something that, the whole advisory group, when we were looking at this, was interested in exploring, but we couldn't get any traction there. And it sure looks like something that could be better than a car lot to me. And, particularly we're talking about that tower, which is going to be where the Alaska Aces business is located, but a similar facility there, and I think that's underutilized property that someday will turn. But right now, the municipality just doesn't have the wherewithal to make that happen. Is where we are.
Is there any possibility of perhaps eminent domain?
Never has eminent domain been used for a park project. I know that. And I can assure you that the administration, I'm guessing, has no interest in pursuing that tack.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Leonetti?
Through the Chair, Mr. Adams, another comment or question regarding pedestrian circulation. I agree with the previous commissioners on their evaluations on the other alternatives, and what actually comes to mind is where pedestrians are going and where they're coming. each entrance to this facility is quite possibly located in the worst location for the pedestrian circulation on the preferred alternative. And I say that with all due respect. You guys did a really good job on evaluating how the existing parking lot functions, and I agree with it 100%. However, the pedestrian circulation on the preferred alternative is centrally located, and if you go to the extent of that centrally located corridor, at the Sullivan you end up at a 12-foot tall concrete wall, and on the proposed Mulcahy Stadium you end up at the concessions. Most of the flow out of the Sullivan Arena comes out of the northwest and the southwest parking lot because of the location of the parking. There is some exiting out of the southeast. So there's been a lot of emphasis on parking as well as the conflict with pedestrians and vehicles exiting the site, which is probably, as pointed out in your design study report, the reason that it takes forever to get out of the parking lot. Pedestrians cross the drive lanes, police officers stop the cars, pedestrians go, pedestrians stop, cars go. So I would agree with the earlier comments regarding alternative 5, I believe it was, and alternative 2 as well. As I will add to that as alternative 2 as preferred alternative that emphasizes the east-west connection not only vehicularly but pedestrian-wise. If you look at alternative 2, in the southwest corner of the Sullivan Arena, there's a what appears to be a strong pedestrian connection and vehicular connection that would separate the pedestrians and the vehicles, and vehicles could exit onto A Street as well as going south and going to Gamble. Do you have any comments regarding the pedestrian circulation and the reason it is in the location it's at?
Through the chair, Commissioner Leonetti, if you look at 2, what you see is that this does provide a pedestrian route right here. The intent, and when we looked at this in the early stages, was this connected all the way across, just as Alternative 2 does. So that southern walkway that you had mentioned there, and how it comes up to that southwest corner, that was intended to be something that would happen. We don't have the money, but we're getting there. So we at least get people to this point, and the intent is that a future project will provide this drive aisle and a pedestrian refuge, I guess, walkway that will get people safely to that location. So that's the intent of that specifically. Also, the way this is laid out, there is a continual sidewalk that comes across through the mid portion of the parking lot as well. They still have to cross the traffic lanes, but that's a heck of a lot better than what we have now. And again, as I stated earlier, getting people in and out is still, with additional access points is still important as well. And the intent also is to take this improvement and extend it along the north. So the fundamental concepts that are into, we're still trying to get there.
Thank you.
And I have one question for you. You'd mentioned a couple times Cordova, you're working to line the parking lot up with Cordova coming down. I think that makes great sense for the dog sleds and things. Are you worried at all about traffic coming down that hill, since it's a relatively steep hill up by between 15th and 16th?
Madam Chair, I walk up that hill quite a bit, actually, even in the winter, and they take really good care of that because it gets a tremendous amount of traffic. So it's not really as big an issue as you might think it is. So we haven't, and there is a pretty good run out before you finally get to 16th. It actually flattens out to about a 2%, 5 to 2% grade. So it does have a safety factor built into it. But it is a well-graveled roadway, and city spends a lot of time on that one because it is nasty.
Ms. Ferguson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had one question. I was listening to the exchange between you and Mr. Sawhill, and one point you were talking about the parking lot that's adjacent to the Sullivan Arena, the one that's not included, principally in these plans. It's that. So that lot, you had suggested that lot might be restriped as part of this project, but it wasn't clear to me if it's going to be brought up to Title 21 standards, meaning the landscaping is going to be included and there'll be pedestrian walkways also associated with that, or exactly, I wasn't clear on how that would come about.
Through the chair, Ms. Ferguson, no, it would not be brought up to municipal standards. That's really the reason we can't include that in the project is it's not a simple matter of putting in some islands and planting some trees. When we upgrade that, not only do we have to address the landscape requirements, but the drainage requirements are tremendously onerous. The Chester Creek is a pretty valuable thing. We'd like to sure treat the water, but the best management practice to address that are in essence some underground cells, infiltration cells that allow the water to dissipate into the subgrade. Well, that is a tremendously expensive operation, and it really the whole drainage, the costs associated with this project to a great degree are driven by high water table, peat soils at a certain elevation. In a perfect world, we'd have picked a whole different place for this entire sports complex, but that's not what we have before us.
So for the final approval, when you come back again, will we see that lot just simply restriped?
Through the chair, Ms. Ferguson, yes.
Are there any additional questions?
Thank you.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve? It has been moved to approve by Commissioner Sahil and seconded by Commissioner Sullivan. Commissioner Sahil, would you care to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In case 2014-003, I move for approval of the site plan and landscape plan and draft design study report for the Chester Creek Sports Complex. Plan review of Mulcahy Stadium, subject to staff's conditions 1 through 7, as shown on page 6 of the staff packet. And I would like to add a condition number 8 to delete the 21 spaces north of the new stadium. Number 9, include the existing parking area between the parking expansion area and Sullivan Arena in the project. And item number 10, evaluate the pedestrian crossings east of the new stadium. And I think that's it for now.
Commissioner Sullivan, would you care to speak to your second?
Yes. Just 8 was to take out the 21 spaces.
Yes.
I don't know about that because I think there's a shortage on parking, and people really uses that. I agree that it's making a problem with, does it's possible to change it to one entry? It's just they need the parking. I mean, it's 21 spaces. When the Sullivan Arena is functioning, people really uses that parking because there's not enough parking. And it's there. Parking, it's costly, and I'm just thinking that there's a better way to deal with the safety of that, do you think that we can compromise to just change that to,
Ms. Sullivan, that's my motion, and
Okay.
I believe we have a second, and we can discuss it.
Okay.
And if you would like to change my motion, you're free to make an amendment.
okay, I would like to amend item number 8 to maybe reduce the entries to that parking lot to 1. You will end losing some parking stalls to be able to back the car. Item number 9 was related to the stripes.
Yes?
Okay.
Commissioner Sullivan, I think we need to address your amendment first, and then we'll
Okay.
come back to his main motion.
Okay,
You
so,
need to make a motion, Monica.
Yeah,
okay,
hit
sorry,
motion.
that's okay.
I'm not very good at this.
No, you're doing fine.
Okay. I would like to do a motion to approve,
Press the motion button.
there you go. I would like to make a motion to approve case 20, the case is number,
No, I think you want to make a motion to amend.
okay, I want to make a motion to amend case 2014-003.
Do you want to delete my number 8?
I would like to delete item number 8.
It has been moved and seconded, it's been motioned by Commissioner Sullivan and seconded by Commissioner Tybor. Is there any discussion to the amendment? Commissioner Leonetti?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I would like to clarify the purpose of this parking. I believe the purpose is to have parking spaces for people closer to the ballpark. I don't believe they're ADA spaces. But other than that, some things that could potentially happen is the ball fields could shift west, which would in turn add parking to the larger parking lot on the east. So I guess a clarifying point that if staff could clarify or if the petitioner could clarify exactly what those spaces are for, and if I'm out of turn asking that, please tell me.
You're out of turn.
I'm out of turn.
But I'm not.
Okay, so I can't ask that. So, just to speak to it then, I would support the motion to keep them in the event that the spaces are relocated. So the parking spaces are still within the project, they're just not allocated in the northwest corner of the Mulcahy Stadium. So I'm speaking to Commissioner Sullivan's motion to amend the motion number, or I mean additional condition number 8 to remove 21 spaces. That gets really complicated. I'm just speaking to the motion. Thank you.
Okay. I think we'll come back to that and we'll see what other discussion is. Commissioner Tybor?
Thank you. I did second Commissioner Sullivan's motion. I don't think that removing parking capacity would be the right solution, especially the petitioner had explained that was primary access for the Kaczynski fields and also for non-event concession access. So I think it kind of furthers that, and also does, as Commissioner Sullivan stated, provide some overflow capacity for the Sullivan events. So I support it. I support removing it.
Thank you. Commissioner Sahil?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't intend to support the amendment. I don't believe those 21 spaces are necessary to support the new Mulcahy Stadium. I believe they'll add congestion to 16th Avenue. I think for that minor use, that minor time that the main parking area will serve the area effectively. And so for those reasons, I won't be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Commissioner Sullivan.
I was recently in the area, and I just want to comment. Cars are in line, and it's a stack of line trying to get into the parking area. Either way, they turn and get parked into that area, or they keep straight. I was confused because I was new to the parking process, but to me it seemed that they wasn't affecting and making more congestion. It was actually relieving some cars to get in, so cars would not stack all the way to A Street. That was my observation.
Commissioner Tyberg.
Yeah, my observation as well, going to the Sullivan Arena since it's been built, I haven't personally felt that it's added to congestion, those parking spots and those access points.
I also intend to support the amendment. Based on the testimony, he said that it was actually a request for the users of the location. So if that's something that the users want off-peak hours, I think it's worth keeping the 21 spaces in. So I intend to support it. So we'll come back to the motion to amend. That was motion to amend, yeah, so we're basically to vote on it. Yeah.
If I could ask, so we are voting on the amendment to number 8, and the amendment says to remove condition number 8.
Correct. The motion passes. Oh, we're back.
Motion
It
fails.
fails to remove.
So that means
I think there's more yays than nays.
Yeah, it means it passes. We need 5 and we only had, oh, okay. No, because we need 5.
Oh.
So it fails because we didn't meet quorum. So condition 8 is in. So we're back to the main motion. Is there any additional discussion? Commissioner Sahil.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to speak to the main motion, if I may. I'm a little conflicted with this project overall. I think there's a lot of improvements to the site through this site plan. I like the reorientating the parking for a better flow of pedestrians. I like the pedestrian way it creates through the middle. I appreciate the new access to Gamble Street. There's just a lot of positives to this. My main concern is the alternative that was selected, alternative number 6. I think the other alternatives that created a new access to A Street are better alternatives and an opportunity to significantly improve the traffic congestion in the Sullivan Arena area. And I think this new stadium at its location is going to block those options for years to come. And I'm just very concerned about that. We're missing an opportunity here. Overall, I think the site plan is good. If this is the best we can, I think the conditions reflect that. But I just am very concerned that we're missing an opportunity to improve traffic in Sullivan Arena, and we're not going to get this opportunity again for many years. So I am struggling with that aspect of this. I think for the preferred alternative they've selected, they've done a good job. They've provided us a site plan that addresses the criteria. I just come back to they've picked the wrong alternative. And I'd really like to see that second access. I think for that reason, I will not support the motion to approve the site plan.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion? Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I share the same struggles with this site plan. I commend the petitioner and the designers on their layouts and configurations of different alternatives. However, the reasoning for the selection of the preferred one, I am not in agreement with. I believe that there's better alternatives that are here. I respect that there's the LWCF, I believe is the acronym, that displaces land if a road goes in there. It might be possible to have a phasing plan of some fashion, but I do believe that a connecting road, another one on the west side on A Street is important, and it cleans up the traffic circulation and it provides better access. I believe also it improves the pedestrian circulation to the facilities. And such, I will not be supporting the motion to approve the site plan.
Commissioner Tybor.
I'm not intending to support the motion to approve as well, primarily because of the added condition 8. But I do want to state, I think the petitioner, did do a good job. I think that the southern access off of A Street would be ideal, but I understand the reasoning behind not selecting those alternatives. I think 1 through 3 had that in there, and the issues with the land swap that were involved. So I think they've made a reasonable effort there. I think that would be ideal, and it's unfortunate we're not there. But I don't intend to support the motion, but it's particularly because of the additional recommendation.
Ms. Ferguson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to point out that it's looking like the commissioners at this point in the discussion are leaning towards denial. And I just want to make everyone aware there is a possibility to ask the petitioner to return for a redesign rather than a denial. It's something for you all to consider. Yeah. And if you were to decide that, of course, you'd have to make that as your motion.
Commissioner Sahel.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Ms. Ferguson, can you explain the difference between a denial and a return for redesign and what effect that would have?
Yes, denial would be this project, as it's been presented, is over and done. And if they were to come back at some future date, and we don't know when that would be, they would have to come back with a completely different presentation or preferred alternative. It's much easier, much preferred to ask them to return for a redesign. That means the project continues forward, and they will work to resolve these issues. Otherwise, if it's a denial, the project is dead. It's over.
So procedurally, do we withdraw our current motion and then enter a new main motion?
You could make a new motion to rescind that one, and then and your new motion is to return for a redesign, or return with a redesign.
Commissioner Leonetti, did you have anything to add? No? Do we have a motion then for immediate reconsideration? Or no?
Madam Chair? I would like to move to rescind the main motion.
It's been moved to rescind by Commissioner Sawhill and seconded by Commissioner Tybor. Did you want to speak to your motion, Commissioner Sawhill?
Madam Chair, I think Ms. Ferguson is giving us some good advice, and we need to give the applicant the opportunity to address the concerns and come back to the board with some solutions.
Commissioner Tybor?
I agree with Commissioner Sahill's comments.
Is there any additional discussion?
Point of information, point of order. I think that, so we have a motion on the floor before Mr. Sawhill made this new motion. I think that the motion should not be to rescind the main motion, but simply return for redesign and then and to make some findings, maybe along the lines of the discussion. We'd like to see a different alternative that addresses these three things. And you'll vote on that, then it becomes the main motion, and then you vote one more time, and that's approval of that motion. It seems weird, but per Robert's rules, you end up voting on this twice. So everything's fine. I just would ask that that Mr. Sawhill restate his amended motion, which is for return for redesign, and then speak to that. Apologize for the interruption.
Thank you. Commissioner Sawhill?
I guess, in my opinion, we should vote on the motion to rescind, and then I can have a new motion to return for redesign. Would that accomplish the same thing, Mr. McLaughlin?
Well, I'm not an expert in Robert's rules, but so we have a motion. You move to rescind the main motion,
which we have, and we have a second.
And then I guess you could make a new motion.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would work. Sorry.
Thank you. I think we need to vote on the motion we have. And I don't object.
Okay. Okay, and that motion passes to rescind the initial motion. Mr. Leonetti, did you want to speak?
Madam Chair, I'd like to move in the case 2004-003, Chester Creek Sports Complex Site Plan Review, that we return for redesign. And specifically, we would like the applicant to address providing a second access to A Street as part of the project to improve the traffic circulation within the Chester Creek Sports Complex as part of this project.
Thank you, Commissioner Sahil. Commissioner Tybor, would you like to speak to your second?
No, I intend to support it. I think it's it's the right thing to do to allow the petitioner to reappear with presenting a redesign.
Is there any additional discussion? I'll vote on the motion. The motion passes. Okay, at this point, we're moving on to the public hearings piece of the agenda, and I would like to read the rules for public testimony. The procedure by which the public may speak to the Urban Design Commission at its meetings is, after the staff presentation is completed on public hearing items, the chair will ask for public testimony on the issue. Persons who wish to testify will follow the time limits established in the Urban Design Commission Rules of Procedure. Petitioners, including all of his and her representatives, get 10 minutes. Rebuttal by the petitioner may be allowed when time has been reserved. Representatives of groups such as community councils, PTAs, etc., receive 5 minutes, and individuals get 3 minutes. When your testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the Commission. You may only testify once on an issue unless questioned by the Commission. An individual may have appeal rights relating to any action by the Urban Design Commission, except Commission recommendations to the Assembly, which are not appealable. Appeals must be filed with the Clerk's office within 20 days after the approval by the Urban Design Commission of the resolution, which is the Commission's final decision. A fee for the appeal is required at the time of filing. An individual may request written findings from any Commission decision within 7 business days. Within 7 days, excuse me. So, at this time, we'll be calling case 2013-141. And do we have a staff report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The school district seeks project review for the addition of bleachers, lighting, a public address system, and related amenities to allow the school to host athletic events at the existing football soccer field. The improvements also include adding lighting to existing skiing, running trails, a trail extension, and tennis courts. At this point, I want to make a correction to my staff report. It says lighted trail extension, and I was incorrect. That new trail extension will not be lighted. Exhibit D in the packet shows a new skiing running trail along the east side of the property. The proposed trail appears to lie within the 100-foot buffer and cannot be allowed as its construction would involve disturbance of the buffer. The 2003 site plan review of the high school, when this high school was first reviewed prior to its construction in 2003, at that time it showed a 100-foot non-disturbance natural vegetative buffer easement. Yosemite Drive. Project Management and Engineering has a contract that is in the process of being finalized to complete the design of the road to urban collector standards. A request for funding to upgrade the road is part of the next legislative session. The earliest the road could be upgraded is 2015, subject to funding being available. Also, Exhibit D shows 4 future building additions. The petitioner is not intending that these be approved as part of this action. They are only meant to convey that these were considered as part of the overall planning effort. That's all I have, and the conditions are, there are 3 conditions on page 4 of the packet.
Thank you, Ms. Ferguson. Is there any questions for staff? No? Okay, at this time, can the petitioner please come forward and state your name and spell it for the record?
A little gun shy at the moment. Madam Chair, members of the Commission, my name is Dwayne Adams with USKH, representing the petitioner in this case, his Anchorage School District, and Ms. Edie Knapp from the school district is here if questions revolving administration are involved, but technically I think I probably have most of the information. This is actually a pretty straightforward project. There's an existing athletic field located at Eagle River High School, and it's actively used. It's hosts about 3 or 4 football games a year, and there's an existing set of bleachers, and we're simply installing the number of bleachers on the south side of that stadium to accommodate those who now have to stand during football games. It also includes the approval of a site for some tennis courts. There is a request before the legislature right now that may be funded, and the school district would like to carry that forward and get approval so that should that be gain weight in the legislature, that it could be accommodated. There are some minor moving of some field sports, but it's really related in very simple, very minor sort of field adjustments to accommodate the new bleachers. There would also be a new entry into the stadium, so that as one exits the parking lot to come into the stadium, there would be a wall that would recognize Eagle River High School and welcome people to the stadium, and be a suitable entry to the fields, something that was important to the boosters as well as I think the students as a sense of identity where they are and what that is to them. So it's a relatively simple, straightforward request. There's not a lot beyond that. With that, I would like to ask Mr. Lang, who's a principal at Eagle River High School, to speak for a few minutes and address some of the concerns that the neighbors will bring forward, as well as what it means to him at the school.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the Commission. My name is Marty Lang, and I'm the principal at Eagle River High School. Tonight I'm here to encourage approval of our site plan amendment because it directly benefits the students of Eagle River High School, our athletes, and I believe the community as a whole. You may not be familiar with our school, so I'll just spend a little bit of time getting you acquainted. We are the newest of the 8 high schools in the Anchorage School District. We opened in the fall of 2005, so this is our 9th year in existence. And we're unique amongst the 8 high schools in that nearly 50% of our student body is made up of military dependents, many of whom have moved upwards of 6 or 7 times in their K-12 academic careers before enrolling with us. And so one of the keys that we've really found to supporting, especially these military dependents, is helping them find quick community in our school, really a place to belong. And we've been very successful in doing this through the vehicle of sports and activities, and that tends to carry over into academics. Because our fall sports like football and flag football and cross-country running begin several weeks before the school year starts, many of our new students, many of who've just arrived a couple days prior to the state of Alaska, have their first experience with Eagle River High School on our athletic fields and on our trails, often weeks before they actually step foot in the classroom. And so the elements outlined in our application really serve to enhance our ability to provide opportunities to our students and help them forge strong, immediate, and lasting bonds with our school. I think we all know intuitively, and research bears this out, that students who participate in sports and activities in high school on average have higher GPAs than their counterpart peers who don't participate. They have higher graduation rates, lower dropout rates, higher SAT scores, better attendance, fewer overall behavioral incidents, and most importantly, they have a stronger association with their school. Of course, this is important for all students, but again, I would say I think it's critical for our military students who are just arriving. At Eagle River High School, as Dwayne said, we currently have a track, we have a turf field, a scoreboard, and a small set of bleachers. With the funding we received from the legislature last year, we now have the opportunity to build out the remaining elements of our stadium to something more consistent with the majority of the other comprehensive high schools in the district. I recognize that there have been a few members of our community through the public process who've raised concerns, interestingly not about the additions to our stadium, but about the adequacy of our parking lots with the future expansions of our facilities. I want to highlight that adding bleachers and lights and a press box to our existing field will not mean that we host more games next year or that we expect to draw larger crowds. It really only means that we'll be able to provide adequate seating, lighting, and sound for those who've already been attending. Hopefully it means no more lawn chairs, temporary rope lines, and portable PA systems. We've already been hosting home varsity games now for 3 years, and in 8 of the 9 instances where we've hosted, we've really used less than about 60% of our parking capacity. The one notable exception was our homecoming game this year against Chugiak High School. We anticipated that it would draw a larger crowd because, one, it was homecoming, and so there was a lot more student activities going on, and because we were playing Chugiak, which is our biggest rival, and they're also very close in proximity to us. Because we can pretty accurately anticipate the size of our crowds, and we knew this would be a big one, we had purchased additional signage for our parking lot to help direct people. We hired our JROTC cadets to actively direct cars to parking spaces as they arrived, and we also hired 2 APD officers to be present at the game and then also to help manage the traffic flow as people dispersed. At that game, I spent considerable time monitoring the parking lot, and I can tell you that we didn't turn away a single vehicle. We were able to park every car without obstructing any fire lanes and without any vehicles parking off our campus or affecting the adjacent neighborhood. I bring this game up in particular, because it's the largest game that we are likely to host in any given year, and I know that we can continue to manage our space responsibly. It was a good litmus test for us. As for our trails, by lighting our existing ski and running trails, we extend their use for several of our fall sports and PE programs beyond the dwindling daylight hours in the late fall, and will provide a great ski venue for our ski team and the community as a whole in the winter months. More than anything, I want to end by coming back to the impact on our students. Facilities matter. These additions have been long anticipated by our students and their parents, and will only serve to enhance the positive associations our students have with Eagle River High School. I know from experience that that will also translate into their overall success. Thank you for consideration.
I think Principal Lang did a really good job of explaining the current condition and what they're looking for. I'd like to reserve any other time if there is time left for rebuttal.
All right, now we'll do questions for the petitioner. Commissioner Sullivan.
You have some future addition to the building. I read somewhere that it's supposed to go up to 1,600 students. To me, it seems like adding more parking because the bleachers is not going to do much. I think people is going to show up if they want to see the game. I agree with the principal comments. They seem that they manage the traffic, and yes, there's a lot of discontent with the neighbors, but there's a school and there's community, and there's always games, and this is something that happens in every single neighborhood, every single school. My question is, for the additional buildings, there's any plan for parking for that buildings?
To the Chair, Commissioner Sullivan, first of all, we're a long ways from putting a building addition. This school is currently under capacity. Bartlett is also under capacity. So there is a long ways to go. There's declining enrollment in schools. You may have seen that in the paper this morning, as a matter of fact. So we're a long ways from being at any place where that is even an issue. With respect to expanding parking, a building addition would probably require additional parking. There is land, mental health trust land that may be considered. I don't know. It's pure conjecture at this point. Ms. Knapp, do you have anything to add? So it is pure conjecture that anything will ever be added to this building, and certainly nothing in the foreseeable future. There's nothing in anybody's capital improvement program or long-range plan at this point.
And there's any area that could accommodate just temporary parking for that 4 games a year?
To Chair, Commissioner Sullivan, first of all, there have been this year 4 games, Marty, is that right? And only one of those actually taxed the parking at all. The other games, which are routine games with Anchorage schools, they didn't even fill, they were maybe 60% of the parking capacity, and there were hardly any cars parked in this area. there to on the right side of the drawing. So there's only one game that really challenges the parking. That game is, as Principal Lang pointed out, it has a lot of things going on. It was homecoming, it was recognition night, it was their game, and that game is only played at each school. It alternates, so that's once every 2 years that it would be at this location. So we're talking about one event once every 2 years, and they instituted traffic control. They had police on site to ensure that the traffic control did take place appropriately and that public safety was protected. So with respect to any requirement for additional parking, it's one event and it is accommodated. There is also a practice field that you see at this location, and there is the ability to use that for overflow parking as well. Is it desirable to do that? No, we don't like to run cars over, but it is a practice field and it's available to accommodate parking, and I think you may have used it. Was that used?
We didn't use that.
You didn't need to use it?
We used
Okay.
some grass area behind the school off Max's.
Okay, so they used a grass area at a different location, but there are places to put cars so it doesn't complicate egress and exit from the to or from.
Thank you.
Commissioner Leonetti?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair, Mr. Adams, in relation to the tennis courts, they seem to be placed adjacent to the road, and the staff packet, or rather your narrative maybe, had talked about placing them in a close proximity so that the neighborhood could get to them easier. Were there other locations that they were located that weren't closer to parking or the road?
Well, the original site plan located them in this area that I'm pointing to up by that detention basin, and that's been a suggestion of some members of the community. But the school and the athletic staff feels that this is a much better location. It's a little closer for students to get to them. There is parking proximate, so they certainly are within easy walking distance of parking. It's also a highly visible location, so it's easy to see what's going on. And athletic facilities are a highly appropriate, you might say, gateway to a school. So there is a change in grade, but that can be easily accommodated with the grades that are there. So, you know, it certainly is a reasonable location. There's been suggestion that their north-south location or orientation may complicate view into the sun, but you know, for the period during the summer and early late seasons, this takes place after school activity. You know, that sun's not due south, so it's not much of an issue. So, you know, the school, the athletic staff really prefers this location. We looked at several different locations, and they were solid on this one.
Thank you.
Commissioner Tybor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Adams, I was just wondering if you had a chance to review the staff's recommendations, if you had any comments or concerns about the recommendations.
Through the chair, Commissioner Tybor, the only thing that I would like to ensure that there's an understanding on is number 3. Let me get to that one, which states that prior to construction of the tennis courts, the project will require approval by the commission. And so it is the intent, at least at this time, that we will design those, and they will be brought forward with the next package because we still have a final submittal to come to you. And that at that time, those tennis courts would be brought forward so that if funding were achieved, then they could be constructed. They certainly are not intended to be constructed prior to your approval, so that's one thing. But we do want to make sure that if we get them approved the first time, we don't have to come back again and get them approved a second time. So I certainly think that was staff's intent. Was not staff's intent, I should say, that we only come once. But if for one reason or another that we decided not to bring them forward for approval in the final hearing before you, then should they be design and construct at a later date, they would be brought before you. So you will definitely see these tennis courts at one point or another, and no construction will take place before that time. So I do just want to make sure that there is that understanding that we only have to bring the tennis courts together before you one time, and I'm sure that's your interest as well.
Thank you. And with regard to recommendation 1, are you planning on maybe rerouting the new trail there? Looking at the buffer, and it looks like you route it through the parking lot if you were going to keep it in the same area. Any thought to that?
Commissioner Tybor, this is a project that is very dear to certain members of the community, and they had brought that forward, and it wasn't a school project, but it's one that was on the books, and as long as they were moving forward, we said, well, we better show it on this site plan. Staff has recognized that there's a constraint there, and we're going to have to figure out how to address that. We don't know how that's going to be, but staff's pointed out it's not a recommendation of staff, it's a requirement of that easement that it's not to be disturbed, so there's no refuting that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Leonetti?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Adams, on this buffer on the east, what is allowed in there?
It is an undisturbed vegetated buffer. That's what the requirement is.
And it's a platted easement?
Yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sullivan?
I'm not sure it's a platted easement, but it is definitely a condition that is stated on here. It's also part of the Eagle River Comp Plan. So it is irrefutable, you might say.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm reading here some of the division recommendations. The number 2, they're asking to provide the bleachers for just the number of spectators, 1,496. How do you feel about that? I mean, does having this number of bleachers is going to make your life miserable? Or, well, I mean, it's going to make a conflict for the school not having these bleachers? Can you guys work out the fact that the compromise of like, okay, we cannot have that much bleachers, some people will be standing one time a year?
Through the chair, Commissioner Sullivan, City Code is pretty specific. It's 4-to-1, and we don't have money to build parking, and we're going to conform to the City Code, period. It's a smaller school. 800 students, is that about where we are, Marty? So, it's not a 1,600 person school. It's not as big as Service, some of the other larger schools, Diamond. It's a much smaller school, and so there isn't the demand. It'd be nice to have more seating, but again, they don't get that big a crowd relative to other schools. This is satisfactory for present. It certainly fixes something that they'd like to fix.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions of the petitioner? All right, is there anyone in the public who would like to testify? If so, please come forward. And please state and spell your name for the record.
My name is José Vicente, and I am the developer of Eagle Point subdivision, the subdivision adjacent to the school.
And could you spell your name?
Vicente, V-I-C-E-N-T-E.
Thank you.
And I would like to give copies of my testimony to the board. Because I only have 3 minutes, I believe, to testify. I'll concentrate on vehicle and pedestrian traffic circulation that was expressed in the staff comments. Here on my left is the site plan this board approved 10 years ago or 12 years ago. And I dare anybody to show me where the trails that were contrasted in the school shown on the site plan or approved by this board any time since then. I regret that the staff did not point that out to you, that the trails are there illegally because they were never approved by this commission. Meanwhile, I'd like to address the vehicle pedestrian traffic circulation. I strongly object to staff comments regarding vehicle and pedestrian traffic circulation and safety and the conditions of approval number 2. It calls for bleachers with seating capacity for 1,496. I did not have the opportunity to review the site traffic and parking analysis by USKH, which apparently describes vehicle parking and parking during football games. Unfortunately, I was not advised that one existed. I can repeat, however, my field observations associated with the September 21st, 2013 football game held at the high school. I included my observations on the October 28, 2013 letter I submitted to the Planning Department with comments on this case. My observations are as follows. Over 100 more vehicles were parked at the high school site than the number of available parking spaces at the high school parking lots. The narrow streets within the school don't allow for street parking, were fully packed with cars, and there was no space for vehicles to move on those streets. The bus parking spaces had 2 cars parked on each bus parking space. A large maintenance area behind the school that is typically locked up was open and students were allowed to park over the grass. 4 student vehicles were parked in Eagle Point subdivision. Coincidentally, 3 mailboxes on Yellowstone Drive and Yellowstone Circle were damaged that day. The conditions were so unsafe that Eagle Point residents called the fire department to assist in a solution to the dangerous situation. The ratio of the number of vehicles attracted to the football event in relation to the Eagle River High School number of students was approximately 1 vehicle per 1.6 students. The staff also mentions that AMC 2145-08F requires 1 parking space per every 4 seats. This would allow seating for 496 spectators.
Okay, and you've reached your 3 minutes. Would you mind concluding?
Well, yeah, I'd just like to say that that statement by the staff is wrong. And you have a copy of the rest of my testimony. I appreciate you read them.
Does commissioners have any questions for this petition? Commissioner Leonetti?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sir, could you expand a little bit more on what you were just discussing? That last phrase that you sounded like you were...
Understood. I was saying that the AMC 2145-08F, the staff says that it states that it calls for 1, I believe it's 1 parking space for 4 seats. That is not for football stadiums. Title 21 does not address seating capacity for football stadiums, for the bleachers of football stadiums. I checked on Google, tried to determine what other communities do. Many communities use a ratio of 1 to 2 and some 1 to 3. The staff is saying that 1 to 4. And there's nothing on Title 21 that addresses that ratio.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any additional questions? Thank you. Would anybody anybody else like to testify? Hi. Please state your name and spell it for the record.
My name is, Terry Mosley, Terimosely. And I am a resident of the Eagle Point subdivision that is mentioned in your brief. And Joe, I am friends with Joe, and I love Joe, and I appreciate his due diligence in keeping up our neighborhood. But he does not represent the demographics of our neighborhood. Our houses are 4 to 6 bedroom houses, filled over 80% with families. And I just wanted to let the commission know that we wholeheartedly want the stadium, support the high school. There are many Eagle Point families. Can you guys raise your hands? Here tonight that support. I don't know why I'm so nervous. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you. And common sense needs to prevail. I can't imagine why a fire department would need to be called out for 4 cars parked in our development. Our mailboxes are set within sidewalks, so how any got damaged, and they're about a block and a half apart, so how 4 cars damaged? I can't imagine. Thank you.
Are there any questions? All right, thank you.
Hello, I'm Richard Dixon, Homeowners Association President for Eagle Point Association. I'm just going to drop these comments. I do support the stadium. It's great whenever you can add to your...
1 second. Are you supporting the Homeowners Association?
Yes.
Okay, and would you mind spelling your name?
Richard Dixon, Dixon.
Thank you.
Not Nixon. Most of these comments have already been spoken in the past and everything, so in the letters in the past, there's some more comments in there. But the thing is the 21st we did have experienced a stadium that was full to its capacity. And we did have some people into the neighborhood itself, and then that night we had some vandalism itself in the neighborhood that damaged our mailboxes. Did it come from students or who? We don't know, unless someone speaks of it or something like that. But we do support it, but we are concerned with some of the comments on here, and that's basically plotting and some of the trail systems that wasn't on the plot from originally. And that's basically about it right now. Just looking at that over this, and I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions for the petitioner? Yes, I have one for you. So you're mentioning so it's the initial plotting that your main...
To our knowledge, the existing trails were never included in any site plan submitted by the school district or were never approved by the Urban Design Commission.
So the trails that are there, that's...
Right.
Okay.
And access. The school needs more access to it, and future parking is what we're concerned with. So.
Commissioner Leonetti?
I'm in favor of trails. If we could have 15-mile trails running, I'd enjoy it. So.
Any additional questions?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Since everybody has hand out. My name is Bobby Stone, and I am the Eagle River High School Stadium Committee Chair and have been since 2010. Originally, my co-chair was Laura Reinbold, who moved on to be the representative for our area. We started in 2010. We went out to get support. We got $130,000. We continued that effort until we got $1.4 million. We partnered with ASD. We partnered with legislators. We partnered with the community. We partnered with the Homeowners Association and South Fork both of which showed their support at that time. We have a letter from the Homeowners Association saying they supported, as well as from the South Fork, we have a resolution of support that they provided to us at that time. So we saw support then. We're surprised now that we're hearing some non-support coming out of that area, so it's a little frustrating. But we also at that time put together a letter that we had to pay for to go through. It was a letter of zone determination that we sent to the planning department to make sure that all the different pieces of permitting and everything were in place so we could put the stadium in. And we got that letter back signed by the planning department stating that we did have everything in place to put in the stadium. And when the school board or the ASD got the funding in order to do this, because at a time it wasn't going to come to us to do it, but when the school district got it, they said we've got to go through the process in depth again just to make sure all the blocks are covered, especially with what was going on at South High School. So fully support that effort, but we still have that letter that says that everything was in place. If you listen, what I handed you is basically a comparison to each one of the other school districts or schools in our district and what they have, and you'll see a blank area for everything associated with Eagle River High School. So the stadium, the tennis courts. If you think about tennis courts, the only tennis courts these kids have, because my daughter was on the tennis team, is they have a mix between the Australian Open tennis courts, which are clay, and Wimbledon, which are grass. And they play at Lions Park, and Lions Park has grass growing up all over their tennis courts, and half the tennis courts don't have nets. That's what our kids practice on. So, and there are no other places. If they try to split up, if they go anywhere else to practice, they have to split up. So they have to send kids in other kids' cars to multiple locations in order to practice. So Eagle River is really lacking in facilities. But the stadium is primarily what I handed you to look at for that. Chugiak homecoming game, I actually showed up as the stadium committee chair. I knew this might be a topic that came up at some time down the road, and I knew that'd be the largest game we'd ever see. So I actually drove around 5 minutes after the game started just to see what was out there. And I did not find a parking problem that they're talking about now. I drove down towards the neighborhood. I didn't drive in the neighborhood, but I did drive down towards it. I drove back into the parking lot at Eagle River High School. I went up and they directed me out of the main parking lot because I wanted to park close to the entrance. They directed me out and directed me back around to go to the other parking lot, and I was directed right to a parking space. I didn't park on grass. I parked in a parking space, and that was 5 to 10 minutes after the start of the game. So there was plenty of parking. I won't say plenty. It was capacity, but there was parking enough for me to come in 5 to 10 minutes late in order to park in that parking lot. I will tell you there are a tremendous number of people that couldn't be here tonight. This was kind of a last-minute thing that came out to us, but there are a lot of people that would be here tonight. But if you support the Eagle River High School Stadium, please raise your hand if you're here to support it. I will tell you the majority of the community supports this stadium. It's a huge deal. So I could go on and on, but I know my 3 minutes is almost up. So it is up.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any questions for the petitioner? I actually have one. So you mentioned the tennis, it's a very nice breakdown. I like the graph a lot. Can you guys use the tennis courts at Chugiak and things like that, or no?
No, what happens with the tennis courts is Chugiak is they get locked up at night, and so the football team comes out there and they practice, and the tennis team actually practices at the same time the football is going on for the most part. And so when they get done, the football is primarily getting done, so they walk out, everything gets locked up, so we don't have a key, we can't get into the facilities. So every now and then we'll be able to get onto their courts. They also painted them the wrong color, they're black and blue now, so it's hard to go on and play on their courts, but no, it doesn't work out well to play on their courts.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair and the board. I am Oscar Hall, H-A-L-L, first name O-S-C-A-R, and I, too, have been a member of the stadium committee with Mr. Stone there for over 4 years. Prior to that, I was also the president of the Eagle River Football Booster Club for 3 years as well. Throughout that time, I have gone through and attended numerous town halls, booster meetings, parent gatherings, various functions to address this issue. And this issue is long overdue, that our youth and our children children and the people of Eagle River finally are on the cusp of having a facility that our children are worthy of. As a retired military officer, I can attest to what Marty Lang has said about the military community. Having lived in every state in the nation except 11, it's critically important that our children receive the very best, given the hardships. I'm speaking of the military children, given the hardships that they have to endure, given a nation at war for 10 years. So I wholeheartedly support this. It is long overdue. Not only does it bring community pride, it will deal with a lot of the issues that our children face to this day, whether that's with dealing with spouses that are deployed or whether it's an epidemic of childhood obesity. So I wholeheartedly support this, and I hope the board supports it as well. Thank you very much.
We have a question for you. Commissioner Leonetti.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sir, what staff comment number 2, I believe it is, reduces the requested amount of grandstand seating. How do you see that affecting the people, just the public in general that's going to be using it?
The only thing guaranteed in life is taxes and death. And I would say that the money has been allocated for the facility that is specified for the grant. And it is my opinion that we should use that facility, those fundings accordingly to support this cause. And so I don't think we should run the risk of having those funds diverted to other times. We are in economic crises, not only as a state but as a nation, and nothing is guaranteed. So the money was appropriate, the study was done, the analysis was done, a lot of work was done and to fund that, and so I think every penny should go to as it was described, as we've worked for the last 4 years.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary St. John, last name S-T-J-O-H-N. I apologize for the extra noise during the meeting. I'm going to get these kids home. These are my future Wolves. I'm very proud of the Wolves at Eagle River High School. I know a lot of them in the community. My kids have done events there. I am an Eagle Point homeowner, and I was in and out of the community a lot that day. I don't remember why, probably birthday parties, but I had no problem with traffic. I didn't have to make any stops. I did not notice any extra cars in the neighborhood more than usual that are parked at the houses on Yellowstone. So I'm very much for the stadium. I think the school has done really good working with our community, working with our neighborhood, and being respectful. And yeah, I'm not great at public speaking. But thank you all for your time. Any questions?
Questions? No?
Good night.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Carl Von Lerte. That's with a K, and last name V-O-N-L-U-H-R-T-E, and I'm speaking on behalf of the South Fork Community Council, requesting 5 minutes. So, Madam Chair, Commissioners, good evening. Thank you again for allowing us to address this matter. The South Fork Community Council strongly supports outdoor activities. We fully recognize and endorse the importance of athletic sports for students of all ages as part of a healthy and active lifestyle. In principle, we support the updated site plan as proposed by ASD, but if and only if critical transportation and infrastructure are constructed. Specifically, number 1, additional parking must be developed. Currently, the Eagle River High School Stadium has 300 seats. Once completed, the additional bleachers will bring the total to, as we've talked about already, just shy of 1,500. Currently, there are only 380 parking spots. The carpooling planning factor, as previously discussed, of 4 to 1 is simply unrealistic. It has not held up to what we've seen to this point. This was verified by members of the community and South Fork Community Council most recently during the 21st September 2000 football game, as previously discussed with Chugiak. Although the high school did attempt to mitigate the expected parking problem, over 500 vehicles were counted. Some were parked illegally by the end of the game, or were parked illegally on the shoulder of Yosemite Drive, causing permanent damage to the shoulder, and again, several parked inside the Eagle Point subdivision, where the instances of vandalism, as already discussed. Several options to address the parking shortfall were considered and can be seen in the USKH proposal, including a few in the overflow practice field, if you will, on the northwest side. We believe none of these are adequate. The only realistic solution is to develop a parking space for an additional 200-250 vehicles on new adjacent property currently held by Mental Health Land Trust, which was briefly mentioned by the petitioner. This assumes a more realistic planning factor of 2 to 1 for seats to parking spaces, which is more in line with what we've observed from around the school district, not just at Eagle River High School. We recommend ASD work with Mental Health Land Trust to procure sufficient real estate, either outright or via property exchange in a more resource-constrained environment. This will help solve the parking problem. We've heard arguments that these large events only occur several times per year, and therefore the cost-benefit for this additional parking space is not justified. However, we believe this to be incorrect. Already, it's used for multiple events beyond the football, to include soccer tournaments, and given the ready access to the Glen Highway and the incredibly picturesque backdrop, we believe it will be a very sought-after venue for many events above and beyond sporting events. A quick review of other ASD high school stadiums will readily show this insufficient parking has created problems within the neighboring subdivisions, and we, South Fork Community Council, support the EHPA reservations and potential negative impacts on the safety, accessibility, and home values of the neighborhood. Number 2, ASD must improve Yosemite Drive to urban collector standards. As adjudicated by the Supreme Court of the State of Alaska, ASD is required to comply with MOA Title 21 and upgrade Yosemite Drive. This must be integrated into the traffic study and the ongoing Yosemite Drive drainage study and repair. This is long overdue, and we strongly urge the district to fix this without delay. Number 3, a second access into the Eagle River High School should be constructed from Eagle River Loop Road. The State of Alaska DOT has made provisions for this second access during the initial design process over 10 years ago. This proposal should be reviewed, updated, and constructed. A single-point access already creates significant traffic and safety hazards and via limited access for emergency responders. In conclusion, it should be noted we definitely support the lighting of the Eagle River High School trails. This will provide important winter safety to a popular recreation activity in the community, and we strongly urge approval of this portion of the plan immediately and without reservation. Thank you for your time. Do you have any questions?
Do we have any questions? I guess I have one. So you guys have noticed problems with parking outside of that one event? With
Yes.
The currently.
It's not to say there wasn't parking spaces within there, but again, there's just parking flowing all over the place. Again. And it's only, I know they say if we build more bleachers, it'll still be the same amount of people. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I believe that the fact that there's a limited number of bleachers right now does restrict the people that necessarily want to go to stand or bring their own seats, et cetera. And if you build more bleachers, more people will come to the games. There'll still be room for sitting, bringing your own chair, et cetera. It won't cover the entire spectator area. So that's our primary concern.
Thank you.
Thank you.
He was tall. My name is Laura Demander. I am the planning and zoning representative of the Eagle River Valley Community Council. and the president of the Driftwood Bay Homeowners Association. So I would like 5 minutes as well. Thank you. So I would like to say that both the organizations I represent strongly support the construction of the improvements requested by Eagle River High School. I have served on the board of the Chugiak Youth Sports Association and can attest personally to the shortage of facilities for the youth and in the Eagle River area, that there is a shortage of facilities for youth sports in Eagle River generally, that there's no place for children to play football. They end up playing in unmarked fields, in parks, and at elementary schools for Pop Warner. Boy, would it be nice to have a place to play a game on a Saturday or Sunday when the high school's not using it, and an outdoor basketball court or hockey rink in the area of Eagle Point. I bet there are some parents here who would appreciate that for their kids in the vicinity of their neighborhood. These are facilities in great demand in Eagle River, a place where the population is rapidly growing, and support the goals of the Chugiak Eagle River Comprehensive Plan, which is illustrated on page 59 of your packet. The traffic concerns raised by South Fork Community Council and Eagle Point's Developer and Homeowners Association seem to revolve around Yosemite Drive being brought up to urban standards, urban collector standards. AST has agreed that they need to do that. They understand that they've been ordered to do that by the Supreme Court, and they've obtained the funding from the legislature for the planning and design of Yosemite Drive, and they have requested funding from the legislature to start construction, this construction season, on Yosemite Drive. Interestingly enough, that will worsen traffic on Yosemite Drive this construction season and next construction season. But completion of those improvements depends, of course, on obtaining that funding from the legislature. But ASD acknowledges that that construction needs to be done. But it's clear that from the letter submitted by LBJ LLC that they are mostly concerned with getting another jab in ASD about Yosemite Drive. The congestion on Yosemite for four varsity football games on a Friday evening or Saturday afternoon seems to be a small price to pay for the benefits brought to Eagle River by a stadium and the other improvements. The letter written by Principal Lang explains that the lengths the school is willing to go to mitigate the traffic concerns raised by the neighborhood. And it's nothing compared to the traffic those of us who commute along Eagle River Loop sit in every morning. So these are the same concerns raised by Subursa. Obviously, someone from the Homeowners Association or South Fork Community Council went to Subursa's meeting and complained there as well to have the same exact complaints brought. Mr. Lang spoke eloquently about the benefits that these improvements provide to the students. And there are numerous studies which illustrate the benefits athletics provide to students, both military families and students who are Title I or low-income students. But what Mr. Lang didn't talk about were the benefits that this sort of facility brings to the community. It ties both the community to the school and these kids to the community, especially these military kids who've moved around their entire life. This gives them a chance to be anchored in the community. It gives a family a chance to go to an event on a Saturday afternoon in their community. So I urge you to approve this plan that's been requested by Eagle River High School. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Valerie Hall, VALERIEHALL, and I'd just like to speak as a Eagle River High School mom. That I've had two sons go through there. I have a current junior and one who's graduated. They've played many of the sports that were there. They've played. My oldest played football all 4 years, and my youngest did cross country running, cross country skiing, and track and field. And I'd just like to say that not having the facilities that all the other schools have had, I've been there at every single football game for the last 6 years. And I've had to truck my kid around all over the city of Anchorage to have home games in different places other than at our high school. We've had our home games at Chugiak High School. We've had them down at AFS. And other places as well. And so we've not had the opportunity for our kids, not just mine, but those who don't drive, freshmen, sophomores, a lot of juniors, or don't have cars, they can't even support their own school because they have to go away somewhere else and they can't get there. So as far as community spirit goes, we are definitely at a detriment by not having this stadium. We've never had a home cross-country running competition. We have not been able to have any of those things, and I just think that it's time, and we need to do it. And since we have the money, we should do it. And if there are other issues that need to be resolved afterwards, then so be it. So that's what I'd like to say. Thank you.
Taller than everybody else. My name is Matthew Turner, MATTHEWTURNER. I am a current staff member and coach at Eagle River High School. I came here tonight not planning on speaking, but after hearing everybody, I feel like I need to put my 2 cents in as well. I've been in and around this program for 9 years at Eagle River High School. I was with the football program when they started, and we bused to Fort Rich to practice because we didn't have a facility there. I took over as the head track and field coach when we were still busing to Chugiak High School every day for practice because we did not have a facility. So I've seen these facilities come step by step by step throughout this whole process. I currently coach the assistant coach for the cross-country ski team, and we are still currently busing to Chugiak High School to use theirs because we do not have lights with our trails at the school. And so it limits the time that we can use ours, how much we can use ours, etc. I've also coached the girls' flag football program. I've heard a lot here talk about the boys' football program. I have recently been selected to become the head football coach for boys' varsity, but I've been involved with the girls' varsity program for 7 years as well. And I can tell you that, as a coach and as a supporter of the school, both in and out, I feel like it's time to, instead of taking this one step, okay, we're going to put up a fence this year. Okay, next year we're going to get, our asphalt laid. Oh, this next year we might get and be able to practice on our field. Or this year we might. I think it's just time that they brought all of us up and, you see it going around with all the other schools in the Anchorage School District, and I see that movement coming. And, instead of going step by step, here by here, the money's been allocated, and I think it's just time that you guys help support our community, and we really get brought up to this. Thanks.
Commissioner Leonetti.
Madam Chair, thank you, Madam Chair. So you've been around the field since 2005, probably.
That is correct.
So
yes.
you have an extensive knowledge of the amount of people that are around the field, the volume of cars that come in and out. What's before us today is to approve this plan with a reduction in the seating of the grandstands. How do you see that affecting the sidelines and the people that are actually at the game? Are they still going to, is the same volume of people going to be there? Are they just going to be standing? Less people are going to show up? What do you think?
In my experience, we've been trying to get this for, like I said, 9 years now. We started off with just a grass field there, then it was the allocation of the turf field, and now we've gone here. And like I said, we've seen and I've looked at the track program. We've lost out on some of the stuff that we've had, and we still have, inadequate facilities here and there that we still have to make up with. And so I don't think any reduction at this time is necessary. I think we need to go forth with the plan that we have. Mr. Hall already spoke that the money has been allocated, especially in these tough financial times. I know the stadium committee, I've sat with them. They've worked really hard over the last 4 and 5 years to get all this stuff allocated and this money. And so I think now that we've finally achieved that, we need to use it to the best of our ability.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm Ed Hall. I played football I'm a senior at Eagle River, and I've played sports all 4 years there. And I spell my name EDWARDHALL. And I'm just speaking from the students' standpoint of what it means to us to have these new facilities. I think it really bring in a lot of athletes, and it'll really boost up our athletic program because a lot of students, they just do what's best for them. And so they go to CHUGAC just because they have the better sports programs and everything and the better facilities. So I really think that having these new upgrades at Eagle River, they just bring in a lot more people and a lot better program at Eagle River. And that's it. Thank you.
Tall to short. Okay. Hi, my name is Gary Agron, A-G-R-O-N. I am a resident of the Eagle Point subdivision as well. Just to let you know, there's about 200 years of military service and support that's sitting in the room back here. And a lot of these folks here have traveled around the country and seen facilities at schools, junior high schools and high schools, that have better facilities than what we have right now at Eagle River. All we're asking for is just to be on par with the rest of our schools for which our students are going to. The principal talked about our students that are coming in from the lower 48. They're expecting to have good facilities that were there. Eagle River does not have that yet. We're trying to get it there. Let us have that opportunity. Right now, I will tell you this. We learned just the other day through an email that this meeting was going to happen. In that email, it said that the Eagle Point Housing HOA board does not support that. I will tell you, though, that there are a lot of residents within the Eagle Point subdivision that has not heard about this, nor are they saying that the board represents our opinion about if the high school should have this stadium or not. In fact, tomorrow is that first meeting for which they will have that opportunity to discuss that. So the meeting after this board, it's amazing about when that discussion is going to occur. Again, we'll find out tomorrow from the rest of the residents on how they feel, but the board does not reflect that of the neighborhood at this point. I'll tell you that much. I would say that the money is available now. The state legislature has granted that. It would be a pity to lose the opportunity to use that money. Our schools today are $24 million underfunded. We're losing teachers. We're losing great people to provide the future for our kids. And now we're going to possibly lose another set of dollars available. It's almost like free money that we're giving away. Why are we going to give this money away when we have an opportunity to give it to our kids? Give them a future for which they have a field and sports facilities for which they can be proud of, and they can be proud of going to a school like Eagle River. So let's not have an argument that's going on between the board and the developer and ASD on Yosemite Road. That's a different fight. Don't let that fight hold hostage this initiative that we have right now before you. It's an initiative that should go through, and it's a great chance for our kids today. So in closing, let's take the opportunity. Let's use this opportunity. Don't let this opportunity fall through your fingers because of some of these things. There are other arguments. Let those arguments be done. Joe's put together a great neighborhood. Yes, that road needs to be fixed, but that's a different argument. Let that argument be fought on a different field. We have a different field for which we want to fix. That's our football fields and our stadiums. Thank you. Any questions?
Does anybody else wish to testify? Thank you. At that point, that closes the public.
Madam Chair, do I have room for rebuttal?
You have a minute. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, I think it's important to keep in perspective what we're asking for approval here. It's for bleacher seating, for some lights on some existing trails, for a tennis court, and some minor site modifications to accommodate this. We aren't putting a new field in. We're talking about an event that is problematic for the adjacent neighbors once every 2 years, and questionably, it may or may not be a problem. Certainly the school has taken excellent steps in mitigating that, recognizing the problem and addressing it. With respect to a lot of the problems that were brought up, urban collector standards, that's the school district is resolving that. That's really not related to this. A second access, we're talking about providing a place for people to sit. We're not talking about dramatically increasing the number of space requirements related to that because the crowd is there already. With respect to one question that's brought out about the number of seating, what Ms. Ferguson, what staff is raising is a simple point that the ratio is 4-to-1, and that unless we provide those spaces, that's what we're limited to. And the commission doesn't have the purview to change that, to say, well, make it 1,800, we'll deal with the parking. It's just code. With respect to what that number represents, I asked Ms. Moramillo, the traffic engineer, specifically, do you have specifics that provide the ratio and the basis for that ratio? She went and did research. She came back and verified that based on her research at numerous communities throughout the West, 4-to-1 is the appropriate ratio. Happy to answer any questions you may have to finish up.
Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Adams, so before this evening started, I was the understanding that there was 2,500 seats that are going to be there at the conclusion of construction of the stadium, quote unquote. That is an additional 1,500 to what is existing. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Leonetti, when we turned in our application, and this is why I went to Ms. Moramillo, is we were using, there's a number of ways of interpreting this, and we had used a higher standard of 6-to-1 when we turned in this application. We got into an internal discussion about what that standard really was, because there was, we were conflicted. Some people said 6-to-1, 4-to-1, which is why I went to Ms. Moramillo. Ms. Moramillo verified that the application of the standard that staff is using is the right standard and the one that she, Ms. Moramillo, is going to hold us to. And we can't appeal that. That is city code. And so that is the standard that staff is holding us to, and we agree to reflect that standard.
So for the number of seats in the bleachers that you're proposing, is there enough adequate parking on site to accommodate that?
To the Chair, Commissioner Leonetti, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Sullivan?
I'm glad you clarified that. I was a little confused with the numbers of the 2019, the way it went. My question is, you are showing in the master plan the future additions. I think, well, it's not a question, it may be a recommendation. If next time we show future buildings, I think it will make an improvement of people's thoughts if we show also parking, future parking layout. So there'll be a thought there of like the parking. Because right now we're showing the future buildings, but there's no any future.
Through the Chair, Ms. Sullivan, the only reason we showed that is to show you we weren't putting a facility where some future plan was going to put a building. You're absolutely right. More parking is going to be needed. That's got to be worked out. That's a long time in the future, if ever. And it'll be addressed at that time. But it was only offered to illustrate to the Commission that we had thought about that, and we weren't going to put a facility that we were going to cannibalize for 20 years down the road. That's all. through the chair, Commissioner Sullivan. For example, Mr. Vicente, I think, offered the mental health trust land next door. Maybe that's an opportunity. Maybe the practice field changes. Who knows? It hasn't been thought out far enough to address that, and in all honesty, there is no urgency to that at all. The school district doesn't foresee at this time that demand for any time in the foreseeable future, so it's a non-issue.
Yeah, no, I agree that it's a non-issue, but probably would come to a lot of the people if they would say that there were some thought into an interest permit. I would just think that it would be helpful to show it, but
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Do we have anything further from staff? Thank you. At this time, we're closing the public hearing. Do we have a motion to approve the case? It's moved to approve by Commissioner Tybor, seconded by Commissioner Sullivan. Commissioner Tybor, would you care to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I move to approve case 2013-141, subject to staff's recommendations 1 through 3.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan, would you like to speak to your second?
yes, I also move for the approval of the site plan for the athletic facilities with the subject to the conditions.
Is there any additional discussion?
Can I speak to my motion? Okay. One, I find that the proposal furthers the Chugach Eagle River Comprehensive Plan related to land use, public facilities, parks, and open space, greenways, and recreational facilities. It meets the general site plan review standards of Title 21. Obviously, I intend to support the motion. I think it's going to be a great asset for the community, and I really appreciate the public comment today, and particularly the comment from one of the members of the school there as well. I think that was great to see.
Is there any additional discussion? Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be supporting the motion. I believe that the general public has come out in support of it overall, and that the staff recommendations are within realm, and that it'll be a great facility for the kids that are going to Eagle River High School, and a great addition for the tennis courts for the community there. Thank you.
Okay. Is hearing no additional discussion, is there any opposition? Okay. Motion passes. Right. Do we need to vote? You don't have to? Okay. At this point, I'd like to call for a 5-minute recess before we do. Okay, I would like to call us back to session. We're going to be hearing case 2013-142. Do we have a staff presentation?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The State of Alaska is requesting final public facility site plan and landscape plan review for the new location of the Geologic Materials Center. The State of Alaska plans to relocate the Geologic Materials Center from Eagle River, where it currently is, to the old Sam's Club building in northeast Anchorage off of Penland Parkway and Rodeo Place. There was no landscaping requirement at the time that that building was originally constructed in 1984. The lack of landscaping is a legal nonconforming characteristic of use governed by Anchorage Municipal Code for nonconforming rights. According to aerial photography, there were 47 trees planted when the building was constructed, and these trees are required to be maintained by the property owner. Most of the trees remain, but this project will replace the sick and dead trees. Additionally, the landscape plan shows new perimeter visual enhancement landscaping where the parking lot abuts Penland Parkway. The effects of this proposal on the moving the Geologic Materials Center here on the surrounding to this site are positive in the short term. This vacant building will be put back into use. Furthermore, the landscape plan will help soften the large building and this expansive parking lot from other commercial uses on the south side of the site. Although not a part of the review, Phase 2 of this project will include a $10 million upgrade to the building and the rest of the site as well. Phase 2 is something that's not a part of this review. It's just something that the state is intending to do in the future. The overall cost of the project, Phase 1, is $5 million. The total landscape budget is $50,000. The proposed planting materials will be hardy to a minimum of Zone 2. The driveways to Penland Parkway and Rodeo Place will remain the same. The overall site plan will not change except for the addition of new landscaping along the south lot boundary. The proposed landscaping will improve Penland Parkway's streetscape and have a positive impact on adjacent properties. The project will repaint the outside of the existing building and provide a new building sign. The project will also provide new accessible walkways from one of the two bus stops on Penland Parkway to the front door of the new Geologic Materials Center. The parking lot contains over 500 parking spaces, but the Materials Center is only required to maintain 101 spaces. Currently, there are no plans to develop the access portion of the parking lot in the front of the building. Future phases of improvements to the site are likely. However, the plans are not ready at this time. The department recommends approval of this final public facility site plan and landscape plan for the State of Alaska Geologic Materials Center, subject to conditions 1 through 6 on page 5. Condition number 1 is a standard condition. Condition number 2 is a standard condition. Condition number 3, it says consider substituting European mountain ash for another species of tree. Condition 4, provide a bicycle rack and show its location on the site plan. Condition 5, resolve parking lot lighting and ADA accessibility with the traffic engineering department. Condition number 6, during phase 2, bring the entire site into compliance with current landscaping requirements. That's all I have. Be happy to answer questions, and the petitioner's here to give a presentation as well. Thank you.
Do you have any questions for staff? I guess I just have one. Why did they not want mountain ash?
Could you repeat the question? I couldn't hear you. I'm
Why
sorry.
did they want to sub the mountain ash with a different tree? Was there...
So the petitioner provided, or the landscape plan shows mountain ash. Staff questioned that. We sort of worked with the petitioner to, I'll say this, that I want to phrase this. So mountain ash is a tree that we see around town, and I discussed with the petitioner's landscape architect that the Urban Design Commission hasn't approved, it seems to me, in the last few years, many site plans with mountain ash because it is a moose attractant. We especially don't see mountain ash shown along roadways. It's a favorite tree of moose. However, the nearest moose habitat is Russian Jack Park or the Chester Creek Greenbelt, which is a good distance away. So I'm not sure if there's a better tree choice, but if they go with this one, I don't know if that's regresses into past history of not planting mountain ash along roadways. Thank you.
Commissioner Sullivan?
I would like to question on item number 6. During phase 2, bring the entire site into compliance with current landscape requirements. I think that's a good item, but I am a little more concerned with the fact that we are not consistent with the comprehensive plan on doing reductions to the parking. When you change occupancies, this is one of the major issues is we have now 500 spaces and we're just going to occupy 100. Do there's any thoughts on like maybe reducing parking? I know that it probably, if they decided to change the back occupancy, it would not be that good, but just to comply a little more with the comprehensive plan.
Through the chair, Ms. Sullivan, so that's a good point. Condition number 6 is not enforceable. It's a condition of approval that the department is recommending, but it really isn't enforceable. This building has sat vacant for almost a year. Moving this state facility to this location, this certainly benefits the state because my understanding is what's been explained to me by the petitioner is that, or the petitioner's representative is that, they're really in need, desperate need of consolidating all of these artifacts they've collected, which are sort of in Connex boxes out in Eagle River, and putting them in a location and making them available to the public. The comprehensive plan really can't trump code. Comprehensive plan is the adopted policy of the municipality, but in this case, it's sort of a guidance document because what we should be looking to is what the regulations state, and what we have from the regulations is at the back of your packet on page 46, you can read there's 2 letters of non-conforming rights. So they have grandfather rights essentially for the lack of perimeter landscaping, for the lack of interior landscaping, and for the building encroaching into 2 telephone and electric easements. In regards to the parking, what you have here is an old big box warehouse, and a lot of communities struggle with what to do with these. I mean, who's going to move into that? A lot of times the big box company won't sell to one of their competitors. Fortunately, I think, some communities have requirements, adopted ordinances which say before, a new Costco can open up and the other one become vacant, they have to find a tenant or sell the old one. Because what will happen is the Walmarts can build a new one, and because they own the companies that build new ones, they're paying themselves twice, and they're happy to let something just sit vacant. That happened in Fairbanks with the Kmart for a while. Many of the commissioners here know more about this subject than me, but I would say that this has been vacant. The state wants to move into the facility. It turns out that they're not going to use this huge ocean of parking. Their parking requirement is only about 100 spaces. The state, the petitioner's representative, I spoke with her. I expressed the same concern that you did, and she stated to me that the state has a really strong desire to break up that expansive parking lot and to make use of it. But they're just sort of in an early phase and really trying to quickly, I think, move into an existing building. I hope that addresses your question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Tybor.
I noticed that a couple of departments had comments regarding drainage, and I didn't see any of those addressed in the staff's conditions. Can you comment to that? And specifically, I was looking at the private development section's comments regarding a drainage analysis and also the watershed management services concern about when the facility was constructed, it didn't have stormwater treatment at the time, and there's a recommendation that they had as well about improvement to the drainage system.
Well, thank you for the chair, Mr. Tiver. Two things. One, in addition to this this public hearing, the site plan review in front of the Urban Design Commission, the petitioner will have to apply for building permits. And with the building permits, Mark Gusick from the Building Safety Division will review on-site drainage and make sure that the site complies with the drainage requirements, that a drainage doesn't go off property into other properties or into public rights of way. So the drainage is ironclad. It'll be dealt with the building permit. That's one thing. The second thing is that with existing sites, the private development sort of looks at them differently than a new site. So with these early comments, it usually comes in that we're looking here at a site plan, but we have some questions about drainage. It's mostly alerting the petitioner that during the building permit, they're going to have to address all of those things. So staff doesn't have any concerns or see the need for additional conditions of approval.
Thank you.
Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff, one of the questions was answered. It appears that in '84 it was an actual warehouse, and then it was changed to a Sam's Club, which I believe is not a warehouse, even though people think of it as a warehouse. It's more of a retail. Now it's going back to a warehouse. So the question is that a change of use?
Well, the Land Use Review Division sees that the non-conforming, they do not lose their non-conforming rights for lack of interior and perimeter landscaping or the existing encroachments. Note that they are not proposing to do anything exterior to the site except for provide interior parking lot landscaping for their required parking spaces and providing a new ADA accessible walkway from one of the bus stops. So they're really not proposing anything exterior besides a building sign and bringing their current parking spaces up to code. There is an intention, they've stated, to bring the entire site into conformance with future improvements to the site. It's just not at this point. Their rush is to move into the new building or move into this existing building and then plan out how they'll improve the overall site.
Okay, thank you. Another question, if I may. Do you know of any restrictions on the plat or on this parcel to subdivide it?
I do. I'm very familiar with platting, and there's I looked at the underlying plat. I apologize for not including the plat with this. That we typically don't provide the underlying plat with a site plan review unless there's something of substance, like a plat note prohibiting access here or there. There's a single tract of land here. And there currently are, there's, I think, 2 driveways to Rodeo Place. But there's nothing of significance on the underlying plat.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Condon?
Yeah. In your narrative, you say this project has many positives in the short term. And I think that's what bothers me the most about this this whole project is that nobody likes to see a vacant big box store, okay? And I agree that it's not a good thing, but my feeling is that this geological materials inventory is more appropriately placed in perhaps a more academic setting, closer to a place where geology students might access it, or someplace where, I'm assuming the mining industry and oil industry, they access this as well. And it seems that by jumping on this vacant big box store, it's not really looking at the true fit as to where a facility like this belongs. And, there's also talk about, what do they call it, a community center, that this area is supposed to be a community center. And it seems that, retail, the Sam's Club, that sort of thing, fit in with that use. So, I can't resolve this kind of disconnect between the use of the building, the intended use of that area, and this vast amount of parking for a facility that only needs 100 spaces.
Through the chair, Mr. Condon, thank you for the comment. That's all of your points are well taken. The first part of the staff report is devoted to sort of a review of what the comprehensive plan says about this. And the site, even though there is not a town center plan which defines development areas and I guess plans out where commercial areas and medium to high density residential will be located, some town centers have come together, some have not, of all the town centers in Anchorage and neighborhood centers in the Anchorage 2020 land use policy map. This type of research warehouse use is perhaps very, very perhaps more appropriate at a college or university or in some other area instead of in a town center, which is specifically called out for commercial, public facilities such as a post office and medium to high density residential supporting a town center in the commercial that exists there. Promotion of walkability, good planning. However, that is outside of the purview of the Urban Design Commission. The Commission does not have the responsibility to do a site selection for the state of where this facility will go. The Commission simply has the review and decision authority over the site plan, but not whether or not it can go here. It is an industrial zone tract, and this is a permitted use in this district under the old code. It requires a public facility site plan review, which you're doing now. Under the new code, it's simply a permitted use, and there's no requirement for the state to come before the Commission for a public facility site plan review. In 2013, last year, we only had the old code. In 2014, you get to choose old code or new code. In 2015, it'll only be new code. And so if the applicant were to apply for this today, they wouldn't need to come before the Commission at all. It's just that they applied back in October because they wanted to rush the project, and because of a lack of quorum, the case was put off 2 or 3 times, and so now we're into January. But this was never foreseen. They really, so it's kind of tricky. I hope that I've addressed some of your points.
Yeah, thank you.
perhaps if our questions for the staff, would the petitioner like to come forward?
My name is Wendy Wilbur with ECI Higher Architects, and I'd like to say welcome to the new commissioners. You've had quite a night. It's good indoctrination, and it's good to see everybody back again. I think Francis did an excellent job of answering the questions and summarized the project, and since we're getting late, I will be brief and just try to directly answer your questions. I would ask some amendments to the conditions. Technically, the state of Alaska does not have to make any site improvements because we do have the legal non-conforming characteristics of use. So we are not required to put in any landscaping in that parking lot. The state recognizes that it is a sea of asphalt. And so they did want to especially put landscaping along the Penland Parkway facade where there are residential homes across the street. So they have gone above and beyond what they need to do there. And we are also including the ADA sidewalk from the nearest transit stop, so there will be direct ADA access to the front door. So what I would like to do is remove condition 4 that requires bicycle racks. There is nothing in Title 21 that mandates the state provide bicycle racks. Normally, I would be a big fan and support them. This is a tight budget. The budget has changed since we submitted in October. We started out with $5 million. We're down to $3.4 to do interior renovations to accommodate these geologic samples. So I would like to delete the bicycle racks. There are only 6 employees at this building. It is a warehouse. I'm quite certain that even with bicycle racks out front, they would just pull their bikes inside. I would also ask that we rephrase condition number 6. And I ask this because under the new Title 21, when the phase 2 of this project happens, we will still have a legal non-conforming use. And still, depending on the level of improvements, may not be required to do landscaping. So what I would like it rephrased as is during phase 2, continue to move the legal non-conforming characteristics of use towards conformity in compliance with 2112. So what that does is it ensures that any improvements comply with Title 21, but does not mandate that we come into full compliance because we do have legal non-conforming rights. And under the new Title 21, it says that those stay with the property and they do not change because of tenancy or ownership. And so I think it's important to amend that to be in compliance with the law there. And I think that's about all I have. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Tybor.
Thank you. Could you please restate your proposed modification to the recommendation number 6?
You bet. During phase 2, continue to move the legal non-conforming characteristics of use towards conformity in compliance with Title 2112. Again?
One more time.
Sorry, I could give you my notes. During phase 2, continue to move the legal, non-conforming characteristics of use towards conformity in compliance with Title 2112. And part of the reason is I think it's really important to note in the new code, which we did try to go under when we got delayed so much, but it did not work out. So we were really caught in this awkward transition. The state of Alaska would have had to pay the fee twice. We would have forfeited our fee paid for the Urban Design Commission review, and they would have had to pay a new fee, and the fees are not insignificant. So we did try to redo this case under the new code. But nonetheless, so any future improvements, the code says the cost of interior improvements are not subject to site plan review when the value is less than 50% of the replacement cost. The replacement cost of this building is around $13 million. We're at 26% with our interior improvements now. So we really shouldn't be in front of the commission, and we really shouldn't be having a site plan review. but we kind of got caught in this transition. And so the state, I feel, has really stepped up and said, okay, let's put some landscaping in on the Penland Parkway. Let's get those ADA improvements in, and let's try to make this better. And the state has acknowledged that it is a sea of asphalt, and they do desire to, in the future, break that up. The challenge with adding interior parking lot landscaping now is then you kick in the entire drainage analysis. I think you heard Dwayne talk about that earlier. We were going to offer some of our parking spaces to Mulcahy, but I don't know if it's convenient. So any disturbance to the parking lot really starts triggering an entire redo of that site, and it's a big site. And so then we do kick in having to deal with all of the drainage issues and underground storage and retention. And it's simply cost prohibitive for, this is really an interior, bringing the interior of the building up to code to house these geologic samples and nothing more.
Thank you.
Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are you aware of any plans to add additional buildings or anything to the existing parking lot?
At the time, the state has no intention of adding, not even in the phase 2. Phase 2 would be putting some windows in and trying to make it a more pleasant work environment for the staff there. So at this time, there are no plans to subdivide or add buildings.
I would agree that the letter of legal non-conforming determination does not require you to put in any sort of landscaping, even at phase 2. If you're only replacing windows,
correct.
It really has no bearing on updating the entire site.
Correct.
What will require you to update the entire site is a new facility or a new building if they were to subdivide it or if they were to do something.
So then if we start to go over 50% of the replacement cost, then that will start triggering things. So there are triggers in Title 2112 of the non-conforming characteristics of use that would require you to bring the site more into conformance. So that's why I would like that last one rephrased so that we're not locked into something that is not required by code or law, but that we comply with what is existing on the books.
The challenge with that, though, at least in my view, is that here we really appreciate the fact that it's an infill site and the building's being used. I think that's a great use of the space. It's not a vacant building anymore. People are actually using it. That's good. But the challenge is, if you do nothing to the site for 10 years, it sits vacant as an asphalt parking lot for however long it's done. And the legal non-conforming determination will allow that and indefinitely until something is introduced to the site that is new. If it's a new restaurant or if it's a new something, if it's new that. So what I don't want to have is a condition on here that's inaccurate. And I'm kind of under the impression that this is done smartly for a reason, that we're only asking to approve the streetscape so that sometime in the future something could happen to the parking lot besides parking. And that's what I want to be clear of. If it doesn't sound like there's an underlying factor on the plat, it doesn't sound like there's anything in the works right now, but there could be something in the future, and at that time, then the parking lot would be redesigned, regraded, upgraded to everything.
This is state-owned land. The state is definitely interested in looking at other tenants. There is I believe it's about 30,000 square feet of building space that they don't need right now. And so, as Francis alluded to, the first goal is to get these samples into a safe storage. They're currently in connexes, and not climate controlled, in connexes out in Eagle River. So the first goal is to get all of these geological samples moved in and actually make them accessible, because they're not terribly accessible now. Once that happens, the state is going to start looking for other state tenants or options. And so that is part of the reason of not locking down too much, because they simply don't know who is going to move in or what might happen. Through all the discussions, there have not been discussions of building a new building. Given the state budget, I don't see that as very realistic. And they certainly couldn't afford to build a new building for the Geologic Center. So when this opportunity came up.
Yeah, if I may clarify something, it could potentially be an opportunity to sell a portion of the land. and subdivide the land and sell it to another tenant. That
I understand,
not
but that's the state's decision,
Right.
and that's not part of why we're here tonight.
Right. I'm not saying that that's a condition of approval or anything, but it sounds like there's a lot of there's been a concerted effort not to address the site, and if there's a concerted effort not to address the site and to not upgrade the site and to increase plantings just because there's no money, okay. But if there's something else that is there that okay, the state actually has a plan, then that's more encouraging than, oh, we don't need to do it because it's non-conforming. I agree that it's non-conforming, but at the same time, I don't agree that for the next 10 years it should sit vacant.
I think it's a combination of both. I think it's a combination of lack of current funding, and I think it's a combination of let's look for opportunities to get some other uses in there and see what we can do. I can definitely speak for the state and for the people that work at the Alaska Geological Materials Center. They all said we need to do something about that parking lot. And so it is on their radar. It is in the capital improvement program for 2018, $10 million to continue to upgrade that building.
So the upgrade the building, right? So is it the intention, or of course, I will not continue my conversation. I'm done. Thank you.
Any additional questions? None? Okay. As this is a public hearing, I don't know if anybody in the public wishes to testify. I don't know if we have anybody here, but no? Okay. I probably don't need to do rebuttal, although I think you have like 7 minutes. But anybody have anything further from staff? Any questions of staff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff has no objection to the deletion of condition number 4 and the modification of condition number 6. It's the decision of the commission. Just a perspective from staff. Maybe just a point, a principle. It's true that it's true that the new code doesn't require a site plan review. However, there are requirements there are additional requirements in the new code that don't exist in current code, such as required screening for dumpsters, bike racks with perhaps future cases. In the new code, bike racks are required. So when in the new code, Chapter 7, Transportation Connectivity, Applicability, standards of this section shall apply to all development within the municipality. And then you flip to bicycle parking facilities, 15, so 21, Chapter 7, 15, 06015. There's 2 pages describing how bicycle parking is required at all commercial facilities. Commercial, office, multifamily, residential, all of those. So that's where that came from. But I guess staff wasn't as familiar with the number of people employed and the use of the site as the petitioner explained tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Doesn't seem like we have any more addition. That closes the public hearing. Can I get a positive motion? Can I get a second? Thank you. The motion has been approved by, or motion to approve by Commissioner Tiber and a second by Commissioner Sullivan. Commissioner Tiber, would you care to speak to your motion and findings?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'll restate my motion. I move to approve case 2013-142, review of final site plan and landscape plan for the State of Alaska Geological Minerals Center, subject to staff's recommendations 1, 2, 3, the removal of condition 4, inclusion of the original condition 5, and the modification of the original condition 6 to be restated as, during phase 2, continue to move the legal non-conforming characteristics of use towards conformity in compliance with Title 21:12.
Commissioner Sullivan, would you like to speak to your second? And Commissioner Tiber, do you have any findings to support your motion?
I do. I find that while there is a concern with the alignment with the 1982 Anchorage Bowl Comprehensive Development Plan's general land use plan map, I find that the proposal supports the Anchorage 2020 policies, General Land Use Policy 7, Commercial Policy 19, and General Design and Environment Policy 49, and I intend to support the motion.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion? No? Is there any opposition? Okay. This motion passes. Thank you. All right, so moving on. Do we have an appearance request? Okay, so we have no appearance requests. I don't believe we have any reports. Any additional commissioner comments before we close for the evening? Nope. Can we get a motion to adjourn? And a second? You don't have to speak with this one if somebody wants to second it. There we go. We got it. Adjournment and a second.
Good night.
Good night.
Do I always need to speak to